The transition from podcasting to streaming was insanely easy. There were a few bumps along the way, but I knew more going into it because of podcasting. And streaming is just, I described Twitch for Dummies. It started off as a cash grab and it ended being a love letter because I love streaming just as much as I love podcasting.
Hello and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. In the show, I interview innovative peak performers. I talk with entrepreneurs, business owners, and creatives who are pushing the envelope to work creatively and authentically. We explore how to cultivate innovative genius to achieve our visions to succeed. This week's show is brought to you by my book, Speak From Within. If you need to communicate better and leave your listeners riveted, you'll want to check the book out. And now, let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I am thrilled that you are here. I'm also really excited about today's guest. He's a dear friend, an old friend, and he's also one of the best people you can talk to about what we're going to be talking about. T. Morris has been writing science fiction, fantasy, horror, nonfiction for many years, for over a decade. Ooh, and I should have asked him how do you pronounce this, T? Moravi. See, I meant to ask, and I forgot right before we started recording. So there you go. This is, as you know, live, real, and unedited. And when I mess up big. So his first novel, Moravi, The Chronicles of Rafe and Ascana, became the first novel to be podcast in its entirety. That's a huge thing. They podcasted an entire novel. They ushered in a new age for authors. Podcasting. He went on with Evo Terra to write Podcasting for Dummies, so that's one major book, as well as the following editions alongside Chuck Tomasi. And in 2011, T returned to fiction with the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences series penned with his wife, Pip Ballantyne, which, if you are at all into steampunk, and even if you're not, you need to start reading these books. They're amazing.
And I'm going to throw in real quick, this morning of this recording, Virginia Living Magazine listed me and Pip and the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences as one of the top 10 Virginia authors you should be reading right now.
Look at that. Fabulous. We're going to definitely need to put a link to that in the show notes. Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, I wanted to share that with you, but go ahead. Keep going.
Awesome.
You're doing great.
I can already tell how this interview is going to go. So somewhere in the middle of all this, T and Pip are releasing the second edition of Social Media for Writers. And it's just so you know, it's not just social media for writers. If you read this, it's got so many tidbits for so many other creative professions and other professions as well, just so you know. Even though you know me, you know I think all professions are creative in one way or another. T and Pip also host The Shared Desk. It's a podcast covering collaboration and other aspects of a writer's lifestyle. And it's also fabulous. You need to check that out. T enjoys a writer's life in Virginia alongside Pip, his daughter, and their 3 cats. You're going to want to explore the works of T. Morris and his occasional geek rants at tmorris.com, spelled TEEMORRIS.com. I'm so excited. I can't stand it. T, welcome to the show.
You know, when you say old friend, it's like, emphasis on old. Yeah, we have a history. We have a very delightful history, and it's great. It's great to finally be here. I feel like we've been overdue for a real chat about these sort of things. But no, I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad. Yeah, and it's really funny that you say that. When I think back on how we met, I was singing at the Renaissance Festival, at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, and we were singing on the street on one of the lanes, and this man wearing these wooden wings runs by us. I was like,
Edmund Devonshire. Yeah. What a fun character to play.
It's
a fun character to play.
And I want to talk to you about your acting. You're such a Renaissance man. And, and I say that not just because we met at the Ren Fest, but I mean, you're a writer, you're a podcaster, an actor, an avid gamer. You do so many things. It's amazing to me. And it's also so affirming to see someone who is creative in multiple avenues and yet excelling in all of them. So yay, I'm so glad that I'm getting a chance to chat with you. But I want to go back and I want to start with exactly that, the beginning. How did you start? What was the first thing that set you on the creative life?
Honestly, the most vivid memory I have was I wrote a story. I wrote a story in fifth grade, and I picked out key people in my class, and I featured them in it. It was basically a science fiction adventure. And you know, I look back on it, and it was very Gary Stu, and Gary Stu, or Mary Stu, if you're curious of what that terminology is. It's when you basically take yourself and make you make yourself the lead character in a story.
Hmm.
And it would be like if I put myself in a perfect example is in Star Trek: The Next Generation. There was this delightful character that actor Dwight Schultz played called Reginald Barclay, and he would be the guy that would rescue the crew if they were in trouble. Well, that's a classic Gary Stu.
Hmm.
And um and and I wrote a story, like, not knowing at the time, but I wrote a story like that in fifth grade, and my teacher was so taken with it. She said, read it, read it for the entire class. And I read it for the entire class, and everybody was laughing, and they thought it was cool, they were applauding. And I was like, that's kind of cool. And I was really taken by it. Well, the funny thing was that my father told me that, and I have no recollection of this, but he remembers that I would write him storybooks, little storybooks, because he was traveling all the time as a steel salesman.
Hmm.
And he would take these little books with. I mean, did he ever read them? He probably did. Knowing my father, he probably did. But I kept making him all these little books for him to take on the road because I didn't want him to get bored. Um, but that was where I started to really explore a creative mindset, something that my parents also encouraged. My parents they never shied away from. There was only one instance where my parents actually shied away from a creative from my creativity. And if we cross that bridge, and I'll tell that story, it's a fun one. But apart from that, they've always stood by everything that I've done, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's theater, and I feel very fortunate in that respect. It's just been something that has been in my life um, from as far back as I can remember, and I feel very fortunate that I am still able to do a lot of that creativity and be able to express myself the way I do.
Oh, that's lovely. And I'm so, no, it is because it's so, the way this is one of my personal pet peeves, and that is that people think that artists needs to be full of anguish, and they don't. Artists can feel supported and can feel loved and still create incredible art. And
I never got behind the whole languishing, anguished, dying in a ditch somewhere with dying of consumption sort of thing. That might have worked for Shelley, and that might, but it doesn't necessarily work, I think, in the real world. I get there are people who have, if they come from a life of privilege, it's a lot harder to, if you don't know heartache, if you don't know pain, if you don't know that sort of thing, it's really tough to fake.
right.
But you also don't have to wallow in it, and I do always smile when I see actors portrayed as those angsty types, because I met those angsty types in college, and man, do they piss me off. So, which is probably why I got a lot of the comic roles. But I liked being able, I like being able to do what I think Steve Carell does very well, which is he is an absolute nincompoop in a lot of the stuff that he does. But then you turn around, you put him in a role like Foxcatcher, or you put him in a role like Marwin, and suddenly you're like, oh, this guy can act.
Yeah.
And I think that is just that is a real truth. Some of the funniest people that can really surprise you, and how good they can be as serious actors.
Absolutely. And the comedy plays as one facet of the jewel. It does not, and so does the anguish. I mean, we're living hopefully a well-rounded and full life, and that comes along with a number of different possibilities as far as how life goes. But I want to ask you, I know there are so many stories, I'm sure, but as you went through high school and into college, when you pursued creativity, when you pursued your art, were you primarily a writer or an actor, or as you've gotten older, a podcaster, or a content creator? What did you consider yourself primarily as, and how did that affect the other types of creativity that you were doing?
If I were to have described myself as any one particular thing, I would say I'm an entertainer.
Okay.
I mean that's because I loved being able to perform comic monologues and pieces for my forensics team. I was in the marching band, so when we performed in the marching band, I always felt like that was doing music was always a blast for me. Um, Perhaps one of my favorite memories in high school was we went to VCU for a jazz competition, and one of the judges was Ellis Marsalis,
Mm.
and he gave us a critique. He came out of the shadows and he gave us a critique. And you talk about standing in the footsteps of giants. I'm like, Jesus, that's Ellis Marsalis. and I
Yeah, Papa
and
Marcellus.
Papa Marcellus, and like a year before, I had just seen his son Wynton perform in Richmond. So I'm just like, oh, yeah. But what an amazing experience to share, And then there was the writing. The writing was always in the background. The writing was always in the background. But I always found that that was where I could. That was almost like my own personal haven. I didn't share a lot of my writing with people, but people knew that I could write, and when it came to writing and then interpreting what I've been writing, that's where it all kind of came together. I mean, I really feel like all the arts that I've indulged in, the visual arts, the performing arts, the creative writing, they all work together. A lot of people have told me that that I have very good comic timing, and that in my writing I have a very good tempo. And I go, well, that comes from music, because I take a lot of the things that I learned from music and I apply it to my performance and I apply it to writing. I think that has made me a better performer. So I would say if I was one thing, I just call myself an entertainer. I loved to entertain people, and I've always had that, and I still do.
It's a beautiful catch-all for sure, and yet it speaks of a conversation. Entertainment or entertaining others to me is not just you're up on stage in whatever format that takes. It's a communication almost between you and whatever audience you have, whether it's people reading your work or watching your concert or seeing you in a play. How does creativity play into that conversation for you? What role does it play, and how do you use it purposefully and almost implicitly?
Well, creativity comes from the creativity of music, and the creativity of theater, and the creativity of writing. It all comes from being able to think quickly and reacting to whatever it is that is happening on stage at that moment or happening in the piece at that time. You have to react to it. And it was always frustrating for me as an actor when I would watch actors, something would go wrong on stage, or something would be happening with the set on stage that wasn't obviously supposed to be happening, and actors pretended nothing was going wrong.
Mm.
They just kept going, and they said, it'll get fixed, it'll get fixed, it'll get fixed. I was the actor that would react to it. I was the actor that would interact with whatever was going wrong. I would try to, and it took me a while to get to that point. I won't lie. In my early days as an actor, I'm just like, just go ahead, just forge ahead. But then I realized when I got involved with improv comedy, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Instead of just ignoring it, I should just react to it. I should actually make it a part of whatever's happening on stage. And it was a real important warm up exercise and also discipline that I had when I was doing comedy improv with a group called Comedy Sports.
Comedy Sports. I remember them.
I loved Comedy Sports. It was some of the best 3-4 years that I had with them. In fact, I accidentally let slip that I have all these archived shows on DVD, and people are like, can you start posting them? And I thought about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to get around to that. And I still haven't. But But when I was archiving them actually not a few years ago, about 10, 11 years ago, when I finally started to archive them, I was reliving a lot of that. And I remember one of the things that they taught us at Comedy Sports was the power of yes and the improv was that if someone comes up to you, like for example, let's say you approached me in the street, Isolde, and you said, I just saw a UFO. And if I were, and the difference between a good improv and a bad improv is that a good improv would say yes, and right now I have an anal probe that I'd like to share with you, and you just run with that idea, versus the other actor who would say, well, let's not bother about that. Let's talk about this instead.
Right.
And I had that happen a lot to me as an actor at the Ren Fair, on stage, at a lot of different things. And that's when at Comedy Sports, they said the problem with that approach to improv is that you're giving the other actor an idea, and instead of running with it, you're ignoring it completely, pushing it off the stage, and you're basically grabbing control, but in the wrong way.
Mm.
And you never will know what happened with that earlier suggestion. You're just dismissing it, and you're going on with your idea like a bull in a china shop.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time and a place when you can take control, but there's also a good way to take control and a bad way to take control. And so it was always about yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and. And I see it a lot, not just in performance, but in writing as well. In writing, instead of saying, all right, we need to go back and change this, or we'll just shoehorn in this situation and we'll make it work. I'm like, all right, we've kind of put ourselves into this corner. I like everything up to this point. How do we work around it? And then that's where the improv comes in. Even in writing, there is a sense of improv. It's like, well, if this happens, this could go, or this could go. And you look at the different possibilities of where that, and this is where the creativity kicks in. The creativity kicks in and going, I need to pick the perfect path to go on for me. Mm-hmm. Not the perfect path, but the perfect path for me. Mm-hmm. I follow that path, and then the destination hopefully will be the destination I want to be at. A great way of looking at that from video games, from video game perspective, there was a video game that came out last year. Yes, it was last year. It was a PS4 exclusive. It was called Detroit Become Human. And this was an absolutely fascinating game because you reach a point in the video game and then it gives you a bunch of different decisions. Mm-hmm. So you pick one and that launches to another point, and then you have to take another decision. And then you make all these decisions, and then you get to the end of that particular story mission. And then you fade to black, and then a screen comes up and it shows you all the decisions you took, but has grayed out all the decisions you did not take. And you saw how some of the ones you took went in a specific direction, but how the other ones went in different directions. It's just a giant tree. And the decisions you did not make were all grayed out. Mm. So that makes you realize with every reaction, there's an equal or opposite reaction, and it's all connected. And the creativity comes in of how you react to those decisions and where you take your work and where you guide yourself to the destination you eventually want to reach.
That's so fascinating that you said that, because to me, this idea of getting to the destination that you want to reach, there are so many different paths from mm-hmm. A to B. There's mm-hmm. A1 and A2 and A3650. So this idea of every decision that we make, that the path you take, there's also a path you didn't take. And that has its own set of actions, reactions, and consequences. And what I found interesting about what you just said about improv is that works in life too. This idea of accepting the reality that you're in rather than trying to negate the reality that you're in. It makes all sorts of practical sense too, not just in writing and not just in comedy improv, but in life as well. You don't have to fight against the reality as far as being in it. And we can look at it from the professional standpoint as well as from the creative professional standpoint. And as an actor, I'm sure you've had times when things went completely berserk, and then you had to react to it as if it had never happened before.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's one of the things that has always fascinated me as an actor is when you one night you have an audience there, you you come to this one moment that you know is going to kill, and it does. You know, people are howling, people are laughing. Next night, you go in, it's the same timing, it's the same joke. You know it's going to kill. You get to it, crickets.
Yeah.
And people and there was a time where T. Morris, the actor, would try to compensate for that, and he would then try to ramp it up. And the harder that T. Morris would try to fix it, the worse the performance got. And I remember having a conversation with a friend that I still keep in touch with through Facebook. He was a guy that I've always looked up to. I believe you're friends with him as well. A guy by the name of Jim Neeb.
Oh yes, of course,
Yeah,
Jim. Good
good
friend.
guy, good guy,
Mm-hmm.
Jim Neeb.
Mm-hmm.
And one night we had a big talk about comedy sports. I had pretty much broken a lot of the cardinal rules of comedy sports, and he was really upset with me. And we were talking on the phone one night, long talk, but it was a good talk. And he actually he made the missing piece of comedy sports finally click in my head. And he said to me, T, it's not about you or your performance. It's about whether or not the audience is enjoying the performance. And when he said that, I looked at, I from that day forward, I stopped looking at comedy sports as I have to win because it's comedy sports. I'm on the red team. I'm on the blue team. Instead, it's comedy sports. Let's have a good time. And I had that conversation with Jim, good Lord, 30 years ago? Yeah, 30
Wow.
years ago. 30 years ago, has stayed with me for my entire life as an actor after that, as a writer, as a podcaster, as a streamer, or now, see, you going back to the original question, when you said, what would you classify yourself? I would have classified myself as an entertainer in high school. But if I was in high school today, I would have called myself a content creator.
Ooh.
Which is a very hip way of saying entertainer.
Yes, it's the 2020 way of saying.
Yeah. Entertainer is so 1992. You're right. A content creator. Look, pal, I was going to TwitchCon for the first time last year. I said, I was hearing people going, I'm a content creator. And I was looking at all these young kids calling themselves content creators. And I said, you know what? I was creating content when you guys were still in middle school eating. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. It's true that streaming is a young man's game or a young person's game. But in all fairness, I have made friends that when they tell me, my God, I'm getting so old, I'm turning 30. I just like, you shut your whore mouth right now. You shut it right now. I don't want to hear it. And besides, 50, you're going to wish you looked as good as I do. So there you have it.
There you go. Well, but it's, and it's funny because the internet is the great equalizer in that way. You can be 60, 40, 20 and still be an entertainer / content creator. And as long as the audience is liking what you're doing, it doesn't matter how old you are. It just doesn't matter, There
is a streamer that my wife and I cannot get enough of. And to be fair, we don't understand a word she's saying. It is the gaming granny. She is a 92 92-year-old gamer in Japan. And it was her and she's playing Resident Evil.
Wow.
And kicking ass at it. And then one day she comes on and she comes, arigato, which is the only word I can understand. And then she starts talking very quickly. And you suddenly realize sitting next to a fully tricked out now gaming system that Razer provided for her. Everything's pink. She has a new mic. She has a new headphone. But then she goes, I haven't gotten the hang of the new controller, so I'm going to use this one. And then she starts playing the game, and it's just so darn cute. And and then at one time we saw her with a guy a quarter of her age. He couldn't have been any older than 22. And the two of them were playing in real time together in the same space, and they were playing Grand Theft Auto.
Oh my stars. I love it. I love getting back into gaming. Yes, there are your fair share of dingleberries in gaming, but for every one jerk you meet 5 others that are absolute gems. And it's just a great community to be a part of. Again. What do you mean by again? What is the difference between gaming now and
Oh,
previous gaming that you're
oh
talking about?
God. Well, first off, there wasn't the MMO factor. That was
What?
that's the first big. Oh, sorry. Massive multimedia online game.
Okay. Okay.
Um, there's that. Second, the very first system I ever had as a kid was the ColecoVision. So that dates me right there. ColecoVisions came out in 83, 84.
Right.
And it had a joystick, two buttons, two fire buttons, and then a keypad, which I never used.
Uh-huh.
But that's it. You look at controllers now, there are two joysticks. There are the trigger buttons, they're the top trigger buttons, then there's they're the joystick trigger buttons, and then you've got the D-pad, which I didn't even know what the D-pad was until somebody said, and I'd been gaming on a PS4 for about a year and a half, and someone said, "T, the D-pad is the thing with the arrows." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And I was streaming at the time.
Ah.
And then there's the central D-pad, which is not the same as the regular D-pad. And then, and I'm looking at this controller the first time I ever picked up one, and I was like, where do I even begin? So that's one thing that's changed a lot. Secondly is being able to share the gaming experience through streaming, through Twitch and things of that nature. And then finally, it's the MMO factor. And being able to play a favorite video game with people from all over the world, and we go on missions together and we're chatting as if we're all in the same room or we're in the same state, and I mean, I remember when I first experienced the VAX Bitnet, I believe it was called, and I talked to somebody in a different state through my computer, and I thought that was the most amazing thing in the world. And this was 1992.
Mm-hmm.
And then and that was where the technology bug, I think, really bit. I've always been fascinated with technology, but then when I started getting into video games, I wanted to know more about computers. I wanted to know more about how do Macs work, and I got involved with the Macintosh community, and it's that love of technology that has kept me wanting to know more. I see new technology emerge, and I can tell I can out within maybe trying it out for a week or so, I'll know. I'm not one of these people that picks up something and a day later I go, nah, it's not for me. I want to give it an actual shakedown for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been like that. I will try it out and I'll see if I like it. And if I like it, then I'll be like, okay, let's see if I can go to the next level with it. And I continually try to push myself in understanding it and trying to get a grasp of it. And I was the same way with podcasting. When I started podcasting in 2005 and I finished Moravia, I was like, okay, am I done? Or do I want to try doing a completely different kind of podcast? Or do I want to try something different? Because I had all the equipment and I knew how to do it. I just had to figure out what I wanted to do. And in 2005, that was when I launched the Survival Guide to Writing Fantasy, which was a podcast about there were already podcasts about the writing craft. So many writers were doing them at the time. They were just like, let's talk about the craft. Let's talk about the craft. And then this guy comes out with the Survival Guide to Writing Fantasy, which was about the business. And people were fascinated when I talked about business cards for 30 minutes. But I talked about the importance of it. I talked about why you should do it. I should talk about why you have this and not this on your business card. I talked about taking risks. I talked about social media in its infancy. This was stuff that I brought other writers in, and we talked about the business, and nobody at that time was doing that. And that's when I discovered I really enjoyed podcasting. So yeah, I think my love of technology, and also my love of creativity and the way technology and creativity can work so well together has been what's brought me to where I'm at right now.
I think there's so much about the marriage of technology and creativity. It lets us do so much that we couldn't dream of, even 20 years ago. I had to edit a video the other day, and I just brought everything together, edited it in Final Cut, and then sent it off to the people who I was working for at the time. And they went, great, thank you. Can you make this change? Sure, of course. And then it's like nothing. Whereas 20 years ago, it would have been agony. What?
Oh,
you have an edit? Oh no.
I have been editing videos since 1993.
Wow.
And I got I was trained on a linear editing system.
Mm.
And then I finally got a chance to work with a non-linear editing system, and it was Adobe Premiere, and it was Adobe Premiere version 4.5.
Wow.
So I go back and I wrote a book on Adobe Premiere 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's a book I don't necessarily talk about because it was not a very pleasant experience, for a lot of different reasons. But the thing is, that did not deter me from editing video. I love editing video. I try to make highlight reels of my different streams, and those have been particularly fun because now I've got my wife gaming, and Pip is playing this ridiculous game called Maneater, where you play a shark. You basically play a bull shark, and you get to mutate. It's basically the marriage. It's the marriage of The Witcher and Sharknado. That's the only way I can
Wow.
describe it. And it works. It works. When you play it, you're like, T's right. This is The Witcher and Sharknado combined. Because you go on missions, you go on quests as a shark, as a
Wow.
mutant shark, and so
I love it.
So we collected so many great highlights from just gaming with her that I created a bonus highlight reel. I found some ridiculous like punk surfer riffs, and I used that as the backdrop, and it's a blast to edit video. And I look at how easy it is to do now, and I think about what it was like 20, 30 years ago, and I'm like, forget about it. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw any of the videos that I did, Isolde, for the Maryland Ren Fair. It was just it was a casual thing that I did just for the love of it. And that was where I really felt like I was fine tuning my video editing skills. But I remember the first nonlinear editing system that I purchased cost me, I took out a loan of
Wow.
10 grand so that I could purchase it. And I got the highest, I got the biggest data drive that was available on the consumer market, and it was a 9 gigabyte drive that I paid $1,200 for.
Wow.
And that was in 1993, 94. And I remember I tell people that story now, and they go, for 9 gigs? I'm like, for 9. And to kind of put it in perspective, I bought an 8 terabyte drive recently for $200.
Right.
So come on.
It's true. I know. Oh, you need a 6 terabyte drive. Here it is, $95. What?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's amazing. And there's such a freedom to creating when you have the technology that lets your imagination run wild and can support your imagination running wild, you know?
Yeah.
I want to, you mentioned the Renaissance Festival, and I want to take you back a little bit to one of your characters that sparked so much for you, it seems like. Let's talk about Rafe Rafton.
Let's talk about Rafe.
Okay. Because my character, just so you know, my character at the Renaissance Festival had a major crush on, like from afar, had a major crush on Rafe Rafton. So
she now?
Oh, yes, she did.
And I'm just hearing about this 25 years later? What?
I know. Yes, Cordelia Toonworthy had a major crush for Rafe Rafton. Absolutely.
He was a bit of a scallywag, wasn't he? It was the pants, right? That's why you had me dropping things all the time. Excuse me, I'll pick that up for you.
That's right. We I don't know if you noticed how many handkerchiefs dropped in front of you.
And a lot of those hankies dropped. I'm like, man, you people need to get some stickums or something. Come on. Now it's all clear to me.
Yeah, there were reasons. There were reasons for all of it. So yeah, let's chat about him. How did you develop him, and how did that experience end up transforming into Moravia and ended up transforming into podcasting? I mean, so much from you developing this character.
Rafe really was a catalyst. Now that I think about it, and honestly, maybe, oh my God. Yeah. What a question. Well, I mean, props to Carolyn Spedden, the artistic director of the Maryland Ren Fair. She was the one that actually put the character before me. And at that time, what I've been doing is, I played Colin Thornby. He was my first character. I was just getting used to the Ren Fair at the time. It was just sensory overload. But the following year, I said, I want to create my own character, and it was Quentin Edmund Devonshire, town inventor, the guy with the wings.
One of my favorites.
A lot of, and still a favorite of mine as well. It was really funny though how many people missed the inside joke about Quentin. When you look at his initials, his initials are QED, and so few people got that joke. But there was, playing him, and the hardest thing about Quentin was trying to find things that looked Ren Fair but were gadgets. And so he was a very prop heavy guy. And then I played Philip Burbage of the Southwark Players, and anytime an actor gets a chance to play an actor, yeah, you get to poke fun at a lot of different people. But Rafe came out of nowhere. I was so delightfully stunned when Carolyn pitched that character to me of Rafe Rafton, and I read about him and I said, okay. So I got it. He was basically Errol Flynn. He was the Seahawk. He was a darker he was a darker side of the streets of Rebel Grove, but I still had to make him somewhat entertaining. So I had to make him accessible. So I couldn't play him like a full on Han Solo, but I could play him as a Han Solo with that was slightly awkward. And I did play a lot of Rafe for laughs, and it was easily done, because once you start taking, and I always felt this way about the characters at the Ren Fair, once you started taking your characters too seriously, it stopped being fun for the audience. So I knew I was the butt of a lot of jokes, but at the same time, I knew that I was. It wasn't about me. It was about the entertainment value for the audience and for the people who worked Rebel Grove as well. And so I got to do some really fun stuff as Rafe Rafton. The thing that I'm proudest of with Rafe though is that one weekend I had what a lot of people didn't, they thought was a really complicated fight for me. And I was opposite of Jim Frank, and I'm supposed to go charging at him with a quarterstaff, and Jim and I catch each other. Jim just basically stands up, and I catch him, and I come down, and it's supposed to be like I got clotheslined. But this one particular week, my arm was just a fraction too far out, and it snapped. I felt it snap, and I had a major compound fracture. I was rushed to the hospital, and I remember the guys showed up afterwards, and as they're leaving, I said in sort of a fog, a fog after emergency surgery, I said, "See you guys tomorrow. Fight call 7 a.m." and they all, I mean, and that's who I am. I try to find the laughter in everything. So I came back, and I had that year at the Ren Fair the third heaviest, the only two people that had as big of a fight schedule as I did were the two fight directors. So they're like, okay, T, we're gonna have to teach your sword fights left-handed, because my right hand was in a sling. And I said, okay. And I said, they set aside 3 hours to train me on all of my fights. I was done in half an hour. And they realized, T, are you left-handed? And I was like, yeah. You guys didn't know that? I've always been left-handed, but I was told by several choreographers that I should learn to fight right-handed, because no one's going to use a left-handed fighter. And the two directors looked at each other. They looked back at me and they said, don't you ever pick up a sword with your right hand again. And I basically finished the Ren Fair, with the exception of one fight. I finished the Ren Fair in a sling, fighting left-handed. And so that's why there's a gag in Moravia about Rafe being left-handed. And there was a lot of good. There was also some rough times as Rafe Rafton, but I was having so much fun playing Rafe that I did a photo shoot with my headshots. I did a photo shoot as Rafe, and I was using that image in a role playing online role playing tavern. And that was when I met the girl that I wrote Moravia with, Lisa Lee, and she was playing Askana. And the two of us started a conversation together, and we used that conversation as the beginning of Moravia. And it just kind of, we did the whole thing through email, back and forth. I would send a segment of our adventure. She would send a segment of the adventure, and it would go back and forth. And about halfway through, I said to Lisa, and this young woman in Malaysia, I said to her, I think we can do this as a novel. I think we've got a novel here. And she was just like, oh, we're just goofing around. I was like, no, go back and read some of the stuff. And I was playing Rafe in the novel a little more closer to Errol Flynn, but I still had moments of levity. And except I always found that the heroes with the amount of levity, they're always the ones that are most fun. Just a perfect example, we were having movie night this weekend at the house, and I chose we were doing a Western double feature, and we opened with the original Magnificent Seven, which we had never seen before. And Steve McQueen, man, back in the day, Steve McQueen was he was so dope. He was just, nobody was as cool as Steve McQueen. And now I'm kind of itching to introduce the daughter to The Great Escape, because that's where McQueen hits his stride.
Oh, that's a great movie.
But kind of the way I was playing Rafe, very cool, but a light side to him. And I had nods to the Ren Fair in there as well. And then when Moravia came out, it was at the time the top selling title for Dragon Moon, and that was because I was really doing a lot of hustling. I was going to conventions, which the Dragon Moon authors didn't do. I was promoting it. I was online at the time, and this was 2005, so the internet was an unproven ground. And actually 2002 when Moravia came out, but then 2005, some friends of mine were podcasting. And they were podcasting their show, which I knew them because they knew me from Moravia. Everybody, I was the guest that wouldn't go away. They interviewed me. They all thought I was a lot of fun. And then everybody at the show read Moravia, and they said, would you come back in the show? We want to talk about your book again. And they all talked about, we talked about the book, but this time, instead of me promoting it, they were asking me questions about, okay, what about this? What about this? And they were asking all these questions. And then I realized, wow, they really dug the book. And they were the one. And so I would be on their show on occasion, but then they started podcasting. So I called up the guys and I said, I've got an idea. How would you guys feel about me podcasting Moravia one chapter at a time on your show? And they loved the idea. And I started podcasting, and people were, and the listeners of Dragon Page, that was the name of the show. The listeners of the Dragon Page were just like, we want more. And then this guy named Mark Jeffrey pinged them and said, hey, I heard that guy that was podcasting his book. I'd like to podcast my book on your show as well. Mine's a young adult book. And they were like, okay. So they had him in. And then a few weeks later, another guy named Scott Sigler stepped up.
Scott Sigler, yes.
Scott Sigler stepped up and said, I've got a book that I want to podcast, but it's never been published. So this will be a podcast only novel. And there we were. It was me, Scott Sigler, and Mark Jeffrey. And Scott and I loved to yank each other's change, because I like to tell people, yeah, Scott Sigler was the first podcast novelist, but I was the first guy to podcast a novel. There's a difference. And we're swinging our dicks around left and right. But let me tell you something. If you want somebody in your corner, you want Scott effing Sigler. He's a great guy. And I've been, I'm a fan of The Rookie, one of my favorite of all of his novels. Bigger fan of Ancestor. I loved Ancestor. And yeah, I mean, but back in 2005, we were just three knuckleheads who had this idea of, hey, let's podcast this novel. And then I finished, then Mark finished, then Scott finished, and then, the rest is history. Evo and I worked on Podcasting for Dummies, and then from Podcasting for Dummies, we launched Podiobooks.com. And I had full intention, after podcasting Bill Above Battings, in the case of The Singing Sword, I had full intention of doing Legacy of Moravia. But this is the toughest thing to do as a creative, is when you have to take a step back and go, okay, where's my focus? because yeah, it's great to be podcaster, gamer, and gamer. This is before I got back into gaming, but it's great to be podcaster, writer, actor, voice actor, all these different things. And but then wherever your focus is it still getting its attention, the attention that it needs? And by the time I had finished The Case of the Singing Sword, I realized I was spending more time podcasting for free than doing written stuff for pay. So I had to start scaling back some of my podcasting, in particular, long form novels. I probably will never podcast a novel again. And I say probably because that can always change.
Mm-hmm.
But I was spending so much time podcasting and talking about podcasting fiction that I wasn't writing new fiction. So I had to kind of rein it in and start looking at getting back into writing fiction. And I didn't do that until 2011 when I got back in with the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences. But Moravia was the best of times and worst of times. Legacy of Moravia ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm not going back. And it's because I had a falling out with the publisher. I had a falling out with the other artist, with the other writer involved. And as much as I owe to Rafe, I can't bring it to go back there because that's long in my rearview mirror now. I'm in a new world, and I like these characters, and I'm married to the author, so that also helps a lot. But
Yeah.
I think I found where I want to go. But the last thing I want to do is go back. I never want to go back. I constantly want to move forward.
Sure. And there's an evolution there. You might
Yes.
revisit something like going back into gaming, for example. You're revisiting an old love, but in a very different way in some ways.
Yes, very different. First off, the environment is different. Secondly, there's the whole aspect which I never pictured myself doing, but I had a friend of mine, somebody I do mention in Twitch for Dummies, a guy by the name of Matt Drake. And Matt had been telling me about Twitch for years. And I just finally said to him one day, I said, I don't have the time for a new platform. I just don't. And one night I'm working my way. I accidentally hit a different button in Destiny on my controller. And I see this thing called broadcasting gameplay. So I hit accept, and I go in, and it says, choose one of these services and you can stream your gameplay from your PS4. And I went, it's that easy? And I thought about it, and I watched other people stream. And again, I thought, I just don't have the time. I don't have the time. But one night I said, you know what? Screw it. Let me just try and see what it's like. And when I got my first ever comment, just somebody asking me a question or saying, hi, this is my first time here in the stream. How are you? Oh my God. It was just so, I was like, oh, wow, this completely changes the gaming experience. So yeah, I mean, there's evolution, there's demands on time, there's your focus of interest. I do owe a lot to Rafe, don't get me wrong. And it's nice to know that I can still fit in my costume. I can still fit in my costume and I can still rock that look. But yeah, even though Moravia did have a successful sequel with a cliffhanger, I always look at Moravia as a one-shot novel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite an adventure, and the way it got me here to where I'm at today, it still boggles my mind. It still does.
I love that you can let the obsession go into something else and start creating somewhere else. So I want to get back to the podcasting, but first, you open the door with Twitch and podcasting. I know a little something about since I've done over 300 episodes of this one. Right. So that's, and I want to talk about that. I do, but I please, what is Twitch? Tell me what, because you mentioned it and you talk, and I'm going, what you've just written Twitch for Dummies, right? Oh, so you know better than most what is it, who uses it, and how do you use it?
So I will tell you this about Twitch. Everything we were saying about podcasting roughly 10 years ago, that is exactly what the community of Twitch is saying now. And if you were to just add in the video aspect of podcasting, but then throw in a live audience, there's Twitch. There's Twitch in a nutshell. Now, for some of your more educated, more hip audience, they'll probably be like, well, that's not quite true because people are playing video games on Twitch. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. But the second biggest category in Twitch, apart from gaming, just straight flat up gaming, is just chatting. And it's people literally just chatting away and talking to their communities on Twitch. And it could be anything from how their day is going to mental health issues to advice on buying a car. It could be almost anything. It could be people doing travel logs, live travel logs, provided they've got good Wi-Fi and they've got a decent signal. But Twitch is basically video streaming. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from your laptop. You can do it from the setup that I have here in my studio. But what you're doing is you are sending out live video out to people, and people are consuming it on their phones. They're consuming it on their computers. They're watching it on Apple TV. They're watching it on their big screen TVs. So pretty much, and it also becomes interactive because then there's a chat window involved. And if you are signed up to Twitch with an account and you're signed in, you can do interactive chat with people. And primarily, you find people on Twitch playing video games, yes, but this is quickly becoming a new platform for artists to show works in progress, for artists to do live concerts. Verizon, for example, since the COVID-19 outbreak, they have been doing pay it forward concerts, and they have been taking concerts and they've been streaming them live on Twitch. You have NASA. NASA is doing launches on Twitch. They're doing special programming on Twitch. They're streaming it all. They did a phenomenal coverage of the Dragon launch, and I watched it on Twitch. A lot of people don't know NASA is streaming, but yes, NASA is. The preservation of the American Eagle streams on Twitch, and their stream is basically a live cam that's pointed at the at various eagle nests just to make sure that they're doing okay. It will blow your mind who is streaming, just it and what they're streaming, and people tune in to watch and they tune in to support it. But if you were to ask me, but people play video games on Twitch? Well, yeah, they do. I play video games on Twitch, and I do have a lot of streams where I'm playing video games. But for example, at the time of this recording, I'm doing what is called fireside lore, and what that is I have when you're on someone's stream, you can collect currency for that stream, and then they can redeem it for any kind of special thing that you do on your stream. And one of the things that I do is that for 10,000 golden gears, because that's my currency, for 10,000 golden gears, I will read one piece of lore backstory from the video game I play often, Destiny. And this past week, I had people redeem enough that I have to read 20 pieces of lore. And it's called fireside lore because I go outside, I set up my streaming system outside, and I light a fire in the fire pit, and then I read lore by the fire from the video game Destiny. And it was such a huge hit the first time I did it that this time I've got twice as much lore to read. So so the whole family's involved now. We're going to make s'mores. I'm going to have a cigar. We're going to just kick back by the fire pit, and we're going to read lore. And you know, that you don't think about with Twitch, but that is what you're doing. You know, that is one of the things that you can do. There's a lot of creativity. I do some streams called under the moniker Twitch Dad, and that was hung on to me by another streamer who rated a charity stream that I was doing, and I wound up raising $5,000 in one night for able gamers. And everybody during the stream was calling me Twitch Dad because they thought it was fascinating. The streamer that rated me basically said he wrote a book on Twitch. That's such a dad thing to do. So everybody started calling me Twitch Dad. So I now do Twitch Dad streams where I talk about things like, how do you do an interview? How do you tie a tie? How do you shave? How do you take how do guys take care of themselves? And I've had people in chat go, my father never talked to me, never taught me anything. This helps me so much. I've had people come in and going, I'm trans, and I'm making the jump I'm making the jump to to a male gender, and this is so helpful to me. And that's when you know Twitch is a lot more than just video games. And so it's and how it ties into podcasting, which I'm glad you asked. How it
Why,
ties
yes,
into
I did.
how it ties into podcasting is that once you get a solid internet internet connection like we have, although I'm pretty sure an upgrade's going to be coming in the near future. But what you can do is you can actually start doing podcasts live. So you have all of your hosts on camera. They're all chatting away, just like you and me are doing right now, Isolde. And then you take the video, you extract the audio from it, or you can use a separate recorder to record the audio. And now you have a live stream that features the podcast. And if something goes wrong with the recorder, you have a backup recording that you can just as easily edit, or not edit in your case. But the thing is, having that live ability, that's what Pip and I are doing now. Pip and I are streaming the shared desk, and then a week later it shows up podcast. So some people get the show live where they can interact with us, or they can just listen to the show when it comes out. And that has been the transition from podcasting to streaming was insanely easy. There were a few bumps along the way, but I knew more going into it because of podcasting, and streaming is just, I described Twitch for Dummies. It started off as a cash grab and it ended being a love letter, because I love streaming just as much as I love podcasting, which is why I do it often. Did that answer your question about what it is?
You answered that in the next 4 questions. If you no,
fair enough. Fair enough.
So
I give good interview.
Yeah, you do. You're welcome back next week. So here's the thing about Twitch, and I love that it has such a wonderful correlation to podcasting. And there's another platform called StreamYard, I think. Right? Do you know what that is?
StreamYard is something similar to Twitch, which is similar to Caffeine, which is similar to Mixer, which is similar to YouTube, which is similar to Facebook Live, which is similar to Periscope, which is Twitch Live, which is similar to. There are a lot of streaming platforms out there.
Right. And so within all of that, you're the Twitch dad. So I assume that your answer would be Twitch. But which one should someone start with? What is the best one to begin? If you want to dip your toe into this pool, where do you begin and what do you do?
So there are advantages and disadvantages of jumping in with what I essentially call the big four. The big four are Twitch, YouTube, Mixer, and Facebook. And I'll run down all of them. Twitch is the grandmaster daddy. I mean, they were the first ones to do it, and they've got the bigger audiences. The problem is those audiences are dedicated fans to their particular choice. Mm-hmm. Dr. Lupo, Pokimane, those high-end streamers, A.H. Chevy and Gigs. These are semi-pro or professional gamers. Mm-hmm. And it can be very hard to grab the numbers that they see. But okay. You always have the alternative. You can go to Facebook, the 800-pound gorilla of the internet, the 800-pound gorilla of social media, if you will. But the problem with going to Facebook is it's Facebook. I was willing to turn a blind eye to some of the shenanigans that Facebook were doing until I saw The Great Hack. And when I saw that documentary on Netflix, that completely changed my perspective on Facebook. And it didn't help matters when Zuckerberg was in an interview on like CBS or NBC or one of the major networks, and he was talking about a dinner he had with the current sitting president. And the interviewer said to Zuckerberg, "Could you tell us about some things that were said in that dinner?" And Zuckerberg got a little stiff and said, "Oh, I'd rather not, because that's private, and I think we should respect the privacy of the White House." And I'm sitting there watching that clip, and I went, "Wait a minute. Privacy is only an issue when it comes to you." Is that the way I'm understanding that message? Because that really turned me off on sending anybody to Facebook as an option. So now, granted, the audience is there, and your audience is there, and it's easy for them to just say, "Oh, I'll click on the link and go check out T's live stream." But I'd rather not deal with Facebook. I'd just rather not.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's YouTube, and YouTube has the same issues as Twitch. They are known for where people go to watch videos, but YouTube is still trying to grow their audience, to cultivate the audience and have that audience know that you can build an audience from streaming there. And YouTube is just so big that I think it'd be even harder to stand out the way you can on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
You can have standout moments on Twitch, but with YouTube, I think it's a little tougher. And also YouTube is, last time I checked anyway, YouTube, you'll notice that whether it's YouTube, Mixer, or Facebook, you'll notice that a lot of the things that they do to give people things to interact with, they all come from what Twitch has done. And then finally there's Mixer. And Mixer is owned by Microsoft. So Mixer is very easy to stream on as well, just as much as it is on Twitch. But what I noticed is that there were a lot of people that were making the migration over to Mixer. And then, of course, making the big jump was Ninja. Ninja, America's best video gamer according to ESPN. And I've seen him play, and yeah, he's wicked good. He made the jump to Mixer, and what I noticed was that there were a lot of people that were making the jump to Mixer, and then I started seeing a lot of people who made an early jump to Mixer start jumping back to Twitch. And one of the things I heard was that they were having issues paying people, and so I'm like, okay, that's a little tricky. And you're owned by Microsoft, so there shouldn't be any issue there.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, well, then what about some of the other smaller platforms that were earlier mentioned? Well, the problem is the audience isn't there, and nothing is tougher than knowing that it's tough enough to start streaming and know that the audience is there, but they're not where you are. That's tough. But when it gets to the smaller platforms, like the earlier mentioned, you said it was Stream. What was it called?
StreamYard
or Caffeine. It's a bit like Podbean. People say, well, yeah, you get on Podbean, then you can get on our directory. Well, that's great, but I don't necessarily want to stay on just Podbean. I want to get to all the directories, especially Spotify. So, you have a small audience to begin with, but that audience is so small that you could be, on smaller platforms, smaller streaming platforms rather, you can stream and you can go, well, my audience will eventually find me, but you don't even know if the audience is there.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got these big four, and I always I will tell people, yeah, go to Twitch, because I'm comfortable on Twitch. I know Twitch, but if you want to try YouTube, or if you want to try Mixer, then I would suggest those too. If you think that those are the platforms where you're not in as much of a competitive run for things. But as far as Facebook is concerned, that's your call. But just remember, it's Facebook. And people go, well, Amazon owns Twitch, so how do you know your content is yours? It's because they say so. And also the content that you're sending out there, there's so much to it. If somebody wants to say, hey, I'm going to own this 5 hours of content here, I'm like, okay. But you have to decide how much you're going to share as a streamer. And I share a lot when I stream, but very much like podcasting, I don't share everything. There's still some stuff you want to keep close to the vest. And I recommend that to everybody. Treat streaming the same way you would treat podcasting or anything you would do in social media.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of that martial arts parable. The student and the master are fighting, and the student decides he's gonna kill the master and then become the master himself. And as the master handily defeats him, the student says, "But master, you taught me everything I know." And the master says, "Yes, but I didn't teach you everything I know."
Right.
So
right.
it's similar in that way. There are things that you can and ought to put out there as far as the content yourself, of who you are and of what you stand for. And there are things that you being circumspect about it makes a lot of sense. But when you're on Twitch, and let's say you're an artist, let's say you're a painter or you draw, how do you use it then? How do you, specifically as a creative, how do you use it? How do you interact with the audience? And I don't know, do you monetize that? I have no concept of how any of that works within that world.
So how it works, and a perfect example from an artist perspective is Dawn McTeague. She is a comic book artist based out of Calgary, I believe. She's in Canada, and she basically when she's allowed to show commissions, she's not allowed to show all of her commissions, but when she's allowed to stream her commissions, she'll show people from concept all the way to the end, and she'll even ink it. And she's basically telling chat, okay, here's how I shade, here's how I do this. And what it is she talks through it. Mm-hmm. She talks through the creative process. I think I'm going to put her in this pose, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and I'm using this shade. And if she gets a little stuck, she'll go, what do you think, chat? Do you think I should use this color, or this color? And sometimes people will just give suggestions straight out of the box. And she told me in an interview, she said, well, yeah, sometimes I will get an idea from chat, but in the end, I'm still in charge. I'm the artist. So I have to decide this is the way it's going to go. And that's one way a creative could use Twitch. For a writer, what a lot of us seen writers do is that they'll have a camera on them, and then they'll have a separate signal input coming in from the computer itself, and you'll see the work in progress. And I have done editing before. I've done editing before on streams, but I've never done creative writing on streams. And the main reason why is because I don't necessarily want to have my work become a work by committee. I don't want it to become something where everybody is throwing in their ideas, because in the end, it's still my story, and I have to make it my story, and I have to make it my voice. Mm-hmm. But I've seen writers do that as well. Well, they'll basically say, well, I said this, and some people go, why do you have your character saying that? Why do you have your character saying this? And you go, well, I did that because, and then it becomes more of an interactive experience. It becomes less solitary than when you're writing on your own. For performing artists, musicians, actors, they will sometimes do, with permission from everybody that's involved, they will actually stream a rehearsal. So you hear how stuff looks very spontaneous when it's a concert, but there's practice that goes into it. There is can we try doing XYZ? Oh yeah, let's try that riff. Oh no, let's go back. Let's try and they you go through the rehearsal process. Mm-hmm. That's another way creatives use it, and it's really fascinating to watch. And another great way that you would not think that Twitch would be the place to do that, but it has worked out extremely well for this friend of mine, a guy I used to work with at an initiative called Code.gov. This other guy named Furlani Zeri, he is a back-end programmer who works with a lot of open source projects. So he does what I call coding at the speed of chill. He just puts on some laid-back, chill music, and he codes. He works with open source projects and tries to create, build, expand, do different things. He'd do a pull request, that sort of thing. But then when he talks to his audience, he's talking to them in Spanish because he's Puerto Rican, and he wants to be an example that you can be Latino, you can be of Puerto Rican descent, and you can be a successful back-end developer. This is not just a white guys speaking business. It is for everyone. And he's actually connected with people in Argentina, people in Costa Rica, people that are saying, "Oh my God, you're Latino, but you're coding." And he talks to people in Spanish that's the thing. He codes in English, but he speaks in Spanish. And through his stream, he hooked up with an Argentinian who came up with a solution for this one open source project. He made the pull request, submitted it, it got accepted. And this all happened because of Froy's stream. And
Wow.
and it's that's when I tell people, yeah, there is a lot of gaming that happens on these streams, but there's also a lot of amazing stuff that happens on these streams too. Cosplayers are finding a huge audience with streams, and it's because they'll have a camera on them, but then they'll have another camera, much like with the comic book artist, they'll have it on the work in progress. And then they'll have a third one where it's a little slideshow of their past projects, and you'll see them creating their different cosplay projects. I follow Air Bubbles Cosplay, who does amazing Destiny cosplay, and I follow another one named Alkali Lake, who I met at TwitchCon last year, and she was actually participating in the masquerade there, and she was a big hit. She was a huge hit. So yeah, there's so much you can do with the platform from a creative's standpoint, and people do everything from music writing sessions to cosplay projects to writing sprints. There's a lot you can do with it as a creative. And I myself, I'm also trying to find different things that I can do with the platform. And every time when I think, I wonder if I could do that, I go, oh, I can, and then I find something new to do with it.
It sounds pretty limitless in that way. And
I feel like it is. I feel like it is extremely limitless. And to be able to combine two of those loves and to host a stream where I record a podcast and then we can put out the podcast. Like as soon as we're done here, that's the next thing I got to do is that I recorded a podcast yesterday on stream. It's the video game podcast I do called Happy Hour from the Tower. And it's related to Destiny. And it was me and 3 other guys talking about the video game. And I basically take that stream, I extract the audio, edit it, it's out. And it just makes the process so much easier.
yeah, it sounds like I'm going to have to get on Twitch. This is cool.
I think you'd love it. I think you'd love it, Isolde, because that's where I still keep my theater chops. I tend to, do comedy. I break out into shtick when when certain things happen in the game. It's very easy for me to do. It's very easy for me to do.
And
so
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think you dig it. I think you dig it.
It sounds like I absolutely will. I just, there's a little bit of a, oh my goodness, another platform.
Which is like I said, which is exactly what I said. But what I was going to say again was that right now, for example, we could be streaming this.
Mm-hmm.
We could be streaming this. Now, it might mean that you might have to shovel out a little more for your internet because you want to make sure you have the upload speed as opposed to the download speed.
Right.
Because now instead of you saying I want the fastest download times, you're that weird one that says, no, I need the fastest upload times because now instead of downloading content, you're creating it and sending it out in real time.
Yeah.
And that's I think that has been the biggest hump for people to clear when they make that jump.
Yeah, I'm in Bushwick, Brooklyn. That's a big hurdle. The internet sometimes decides to play fast and loose with speeds of all sorts. Right. So okay. So you're on Twitch. You've written the book. Tell me about the book. Tell me about what Twitch for Dummies does for the person who goes and gets Twitch for Dummies. What does it help you do?
Okay, I got to get this out first. It is not a get-rich-quick book. That is the first thing I want to tell people, because I have been called to task before, and this is why I still occasionally will do a search on Twitch, Twitch for Dummies, or just Twitch in general, and my name or something along those lines. There have been some threads on Twitter that have been pretty nasty about what people think the book is. And some people have had that snide remark. These are accomplished streamers who have picked up Twitch for Dummies, and they say, "Oh, I'm about to make it big now." And my thought is, okay, the reason why you're calling me out like that in that manner is because I didn't know you when I read the book. And now that I've met you, I still don't want to get to know you because you're kind of being a jerk. But I have met people, like I know that one of the streamer liaisons picked up the book, took a picture of it, and said, "Do you have any idea how much I would love to send this out to some of the new people I get assigned to in Twitch?" And most of the when people approach it from that perspective, then it gets fun. Mm-hmm. Because then I get involved in the conversation, and people are just like, "Oh my God, this is a real book." And that was the funny thing too. When I had this book in hand, people didn't believe it was real. Even the people from Twitch thought I had printed up a one-shot knockoff book. And I said, "Oh no, you can't do that with a For Dummies book. That's how you get sued." But a lot of people think it's a get-rich-quick book, and it's not. When you get Twitch for Dummies, it is soup to nuts. It is, here's what streaming is. Here's what you're dealing with. Now let's stream off of a console. Okay, now let's stream with a PC. Okay, now let's upgrade our studio. Okay, now let's stream without the video game. And the way it ends is that when you end the Twitch, when you end the For Dummies books, it all ends with a top 10 things you need, or top 10 things. It's like a 10 parts of tens or tens list, where you have to give 10 things about the subject. Mm-hmm. And with Twitch for Dummies, I ended it with 10 streamers that influenced me. And then I did 10 bits of advice from streamers big and small. And I interviewed 10 different streamers, one of them being Dr. Lupo, who is one of the biggest names on Twitch. And I basically asked them, what's that one piece of advice you would want to give people? And you would think they would all give the same advice, but all 10 of these people all gave different bits of advice. And the reason I ended it with that was because I wanted people to know this book was not about just my journey, but it was about their journey as well through Twitch. And that's what I meant by it really is a love letter to the platform, because I had a blast writing this book. And I make it clear, you're not going to want to quit your day job. There's even a section of this book that says, do not quit your day job. But it will tell you from soup to nuts, this is how you stream. And you don't necessarily even need a camera. If you've got a gaming headset and a console, you could stream today. Oh, and you have to have the internet connection, of course. But those are the three things you essentially need. And a lot of people joke about, well, yeah, so why write an entire book on that? I just need to do this, and I start streaming. It's like, yeah, but then I go into other things. Like, this is how you stream. This is what you try to do while you're playing the video game. And this is some things you don't want to do when you're visiting other streamers or you're on your own stream. Try avoid doing this. And so it's part etiquette, it's part strategy, it's part content creation. It's a lot of things. But I tell people, this is the book that if you want to know how to stream, or if you've got all the tools and you're curious about streaming, or if you've been streaming, you're like, I need to look at this from a new perspective, this is the book. It's for all levels of streamer. And if if you were to say, well, will it teach me how to be the next ninja? No, it won't. But it will give you some advice, like, remember, when you're streaming, you're not only gaming, but you're also paying attention to your stream, so that when people start asking you questions, you have to respond to them while still playing the game. And that is the toughest thing you have to deal with. If people ask me, what is the hardest part of streaming? it's being attentive to your chat while you're still playing the video game. You have to be a really good multitasker. And if you're not, streaming is going to be a challenge for you.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It builds and builds on a very particular, very creative skill set.
Yes, it does.
That's fascinating. You said something about working with, and I want to pivot just a little bit. You said something about working with code.gov and sort of the business world. And I'm wondering, can you use Twitch if you're a business? Do business people use this platform? And if so, how?
Well, unofficially, code.gov was on Twitch through my friend Froy. Because Froy, with permission from everybody, started up, and it was funny. Talk about kismet. Froy had just established a Twitch stream and was thinking about doing code stuff, and then I come on board as the chief of communications, and I'm working on this book, and the guy in charge, of code.gov at the time, Alvin Salehi, said, "So what's your next writing project?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing this. I'm doing it for Dummies book. It's Twitch for Dummies." And Froy's head pokes up and he goes, "I need to talk to you." And I gave him different recommendations on what to do. And then Froy couldn't come out and say this is code.gov on Twitch. But what he could do was he had for his what's called an overlay, which is the animated movie or the animated frame that plays around you while you're gaming. He had visit us at code.gov, and he had like different websites, the project he was working on, all this stuff. It was very cool. So yeah, can businesses use it? Absolutely. It may not surprise you, but right now the businesses that tend to be using Twitch the most are people in the video game industry. PlayStation had their massive rollout of PS5 on Twitch. When Bungie announced their new season, when Bungie has any new announcements, they go on Twitch. They have a full studio, a full-on studio, where they go in and they talk to people. They do interviews. They do all that stuff. And they do it. They do their rollouts on Twitch. As I mentioned earlier, Verizon, since the beginning of COVID-19, they've been doing this pay it forward program where they have different people coming in and they stream live concerts, they stream live events of all different kinds. And then while not necessarily, well, no, you really can't call that streaming. No, that's more of just using a video platform for playback. But there are businesses that want to know, what can we do with this platform, and how do we basically use it? And pretty much the easiest way for them to use it is for promotion. But you mentioned something about monetizing. And the way you monetize it is you get people that sub to your channel. People can follow a channel, it doesn't cost a thing, and you get notified whenever you go into streaming mode. You get a little email that says, "Hey, this person's live," so you show up and that's it. And then you have the subscription or subs, and that's where you pay like $4.99 a month, or $9.99 for tier 2, or $24.99 for tier 3. So those are different things. But the question is, if following is free and I'm getting notified, why would I want to sub? And this is where the monetization comes in. When you're on Twitch, you can use, and pretty much any of these services, you have these little things called emotes. They're little cartoons. They're little icons that you can throw into chat as reactions to things. Like, for example, I have a rage emote. If I'm raging in the game, people do this rage emote, and it's a little artist rendering of my cat Viola, and her eyes are aflame, and she's in attack mode. If I'm lurking, people use the Benedict lurk emote, and then I have a Twitch dad emote. That's a tier 3. Other things that I offer people as initiatives is that for subs, I will say, you know what, at tier 2, you get these emotes as well as these emotes. And at tier 3, I do something called Subs for St. Jude, where if you pay basically $25 a month, you sub to my channel, I will, in your name, make a $25 donation. I only get half of that. I only get half of the sub, but I'm still monetizing it. But I take half of that sub, or sorry, I take the full amount, that $25, and I make a donation in your name to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So there are all different types of initiatives you can give people to sub. Now, if you're an organization like, say, Bungie, and people are subbing to the channel because they want those Bungie exclusive emotes, the question is, well, what are they doing with the money? Every sub they make goes to the Bungie Foundation, which is their charity stream, and usually goes to St. Jude's as well. So you can use, as a business, you can use Twitch to be a platform. But if people start subbing to your channel, the smart thing to do as a business is saying, well, we're going to take that money and we're going to put it towards a foundation, or we're going to put it towards this particular charity. So now you're killing two birds with one stone. You got a promotional platform for your latest WYSIWYG, for the latest innovation that your corporation is coming up with. And if people are subbing to your channel, there's your give back. And now you're actually giving back to the community that you're servicing. So our business is starting to figure that out, and they're starting to get on Twitch. Yeah, they are. And it's pretty exciting, because right now you're starting to see a growth on Twitch that's pretty crazy. And I think it's because businesses are starting to figure it out. Also, the other big appeal about Twitch is that a younger demographic is there. But they also have to remember that it's a younger demographic. So you're going to be dealing with a lot more snark. You're going to be dealing with a lot more attitude. And also, businesses may get on Twitch and go, maybe our audience isn't here. And if that's the case, then okay, then you go somewhere else. But to say that Twitch is just a fad is like saying podcasting is just a fad. And it's already on, I think, its 10th renaissance. So I really think people are now starting. Twitch has become, or rather I should say, streaming has become so prevalent that in the 4th edition of Podcasting for Dummies, which we're getting ready to sign off on, in the 4th edition, we're actually doubling down, and we're actually putting in the final chapter of the book is streaming and how it plays back to podcasting, and why it's important for podcasters to understand how streaming works, because that's only going to benefit and help your podcast grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now my head is filled with all these ideas of getting a Twitch account and then starting to stream my podcasts on Twitch and then put them in.
That's how it starts.
So thank you for that. But now I'm gonna be filling my journal full of notes based on our conversation. But there's something that you said that stuck with me and struck me at the same time. You were talking about code.gov and your friend and colleague who was doing this, and they came to you and said, what are you working on? You had a boss who, it seems like, was willing and interested in encouraging you to innovate, to think differently, to think creatively. Can you talk about that a little bit? What was that like, and what do you think the good characteristics of a boss like that are, and when doesn't it work? Like when you have a boss who isn't interested in letting the creatives be creative and innovative and sort of be out there with their ingenuity. Can you talk a little bit about, if you have experience with either or? I would love to hear it.
I certainly can. I have experience with both. So first off, let me get the boss that does not go with that does not let creatives be creatives. So I want to lead with that, because I want to end talking about code.gov, which, as I've told people before, it really was the best job I've ever held. And I felt very blessed to be in such good company at code.gov. Before code.gov, I worked with a for-profit university. And yeah, I'm not one about the for-profit universities, trust me. But the thing was, it was keeping a roof over the head, and you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do. Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't turning tricks on a street corner, but it felt really close to that. But when it comes to when it came to being creative, there was there was a really big problem with the creative aspect of this for-profit university. The first big problem was that the executive VP of the university, who was in charge of marketing, was also the wife of the CEO and president of the university. So already that was a little dicey.
Mm-hmm.
I was hired by these folks to be a social media guy. Because they were on social media, but they were just it was a ship without a rudder, and they needed direction, and I was giving them that. And I was approached, but the thing was, because it was digital, and because the CEO's wife did not know or understand or care about social media, she was like, "Well, that's digital. That's a digital thing. So let's give it to IT." So I worked with I was in IT, basically doing digital marketing. And I preferred it that way because I could talk to people from IT. I understood a lot of their language and their culture. And so I was fine with that. So I'm in the IT department, and boss comes up to me and says, "T, I've just volunteered you for a project." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And I was expecting it to be something about social media or something. He's like, "You're going to write the next television commercial ad campaign." And I was like, "Isn't that the executive VP's job?" And he goes, "Yeah, but she says she can't do it. The CEO wants it." I said we could do it. So let's do it. I said, "Okay." And the reason he did that was because he knew I was a writer. So we wrote a script, rewrote it again, got it approved. And then we went on ahead and we took that script to the production house. We wrote it again, and we then started scouting out locations. I helped out with some of those scouting locations, suggested these landmarks and certain things like that. And what they had done previous to this was they would basically do these television commercials that were really about the university itself and the stuff you got for free and all this stuff. But it wasn't the way that people were selling these for-profit universities. They were selling them on the fact that if you did this, if you went to this university, you could do more, you could be more. It was about the human condition, not about, "Oh, I get my textbooks in digital formats for free." None of these people talked about that. All these other universities were talking about, "I became a better person after I finished my college degree." It was about the human experience, the human journey, not about the perks of the school. So that was what I created. It was something radically different for this university, and the spots went live, and they became the most popular, the most responded to of all the different ad campaigns that had come before. It was a huge hit. And then one day I get called into the executive VP's office, and she reprimanded me. She reprimanded me, and she basically said to me in so many words, "You did good, but remember, you're here for social media. Leave the marketing to the professionals." And that was pretty much a very polite executive way of saying, "Stay in your lane."
Right.
And they went right back to the same old spots after this spot ended. And tuition took a hit. Enrollment took a hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed out of it. And when I was going from this for-profit university to a government job, I was expecting no. I was expecting to be told no on everything, because here I was at a small for-profit university, and I was not allowed to be creative. And if you're in any form of academia and you're not allowed to be creative, I'm like, well, then if I'm going to government, it's going to be even worse. But I got lucky. The gentleman that ran code.gov, a guy by the name of Alvin Salehi, he was on it. He actually hired me. He told me later he hired me because he kind of caught me off guard during my interview. He said, "I understand you edit video." And I said, well, I do on the side. Yeah, I do some casual video editing and some video work. He goes, do you have anything you could show us? And I kind of went into a panic because if I had known to prepare video, I would have. But the only thing I had was a 4 minute. No, I'm sorry. It was a 2.5 minute book trailer that I had cut for the Diamond Conspiracy, which was the fourth book in the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences series with me and my wife Pip. And I said, yeah, I do. Let me go ahead and cue it up. And I'm sweating bullets because the last thing I wanted to do was introduce them to my fiction work, because I was afraid if I had done that, they would be like, oh, this guy's writing science fiction on the side. He's going to have divided attentions, which I've gotten from other jobs. People honestly thought I was going to quit after I published my first book. And I was like, no, I'm still going to hold my job because I'm not getting rich off the books. But thank you for your vote of confidence. But yeah, I actually had somebody say, I mentioned someone, hey, I finished the final deadline of my book, and they go, oh, well, I'm glad that distraction is done. So yeah, so I was expecting that, and I thought I'm going to lose the job because of this. But they were riveted, and I remember Salehi looked up from my laptop and said, "You edited this?" I said, I wrote it, I edited it, I shot it, I did all the production on it. And I got the actors together and everything. And he said, that was when you sealed it. You nailed it. And we said, this is the guy we want. And he basically said, we want you to do more video work for us. We want you to build us a video portfolio. And I did that. I had made a hype video for code.gov. We did a hack day for GW. I did a little highlights reel that was about 3 minutes long. I started doing these little video streams from the top of the GSA building, and I called them roof talks. And then because of the roof talks and their popularity, I started doing this little video series called Rooftop Recommendations. And again, I didn't have to pitch this. They just wanted me to throw it at the wall and saw if it stuck, and they gave me full creative reign. My project manager loved Rooftop Recommendations, and what I would do is I would go up to the top of the GSA building. I'd have Washington D.C. behind me, and I did a little brief intro and a brief outro about code.gov
mm-hmm.
and about whatever project we were going to be talking about in that rooftop recommendation. Then there was 1 minute segment about it, what it did, where you could find it, and then the outro segment would be just a simple little, this is what we are at code.gov. This is your code. It's America's code. And we encourage you to come and be a part of what we do. From all of us here at code.gov, code on. And everybody loved it. And it was that, and Alvin Salehi said to me on his retirement party, he said, hiring you was the smartest thing I did because I needed somebody to just be able to go in that creative direction. And he got it. He understood that if you hire the right people, and you hire the people that aren't waiting for the nudge to move forward, but if they're just saying, hey, I've got an idea, let them run with it. And if it fails, it fails. But there's always lessons learned in a failure, and there are also good and bad failures. And most of the time, I think what people are afraid of with creatives in the professional industry is that they're worried that they're going to go off on the rails on something and make the corporations look bad. But really, creatives are going to be the last people to do that because they know what boundaries to work in. I see this a lot in social media. A perfect example of where creativity really worked well was with Campbell's. Campbell's Soup basically had a commercial featuring a gay couple, and somebody came onto their Facebook and basically said, I'm going to stop buying Campbell's products from this point on because I refuse to support any organization that would encourage this sort of deviant behavior. And the person from Campbell's got back on and said, we understand and respect your position, but just want you to know you're here so that when you're ready to warm that cold black heart of yours, know that there's a can of warm cream of tomato soup from Campbell's just waiting for you to enjoy. And then maybe when it'll even restore part of your soul, we know it's still there and we want to help you find it. Now, maybe some execs would have thought that would be pushing the boat a little too far out, but that was Campbell's doubling down, saying, we see what this is, and this is the stance we're taking. And that kind of creative response did wonders for Campbell's on a PR field. Compared to DiGiorno Pizza, there was a hashtag that was trending on Twitter one day, and it was called "Why I Stayed." And DiGiorno Pizza responded with, "Because they had fresh, hot DiGiorno pizza waiting for me." Hashtag "Why I Stayed." What someone failed to do was check what that hashtag was pertaining to. It was pertaining to domestic violence.
Right.
And the whole idea of why I stayed, knowing that my partner was violent. And boy, did that backfire on DiGiorno. It backfired hard. And that's why I say you need to trust the people that are creative, because they're going to take the time to do a little research. They're going to take some time to understand the boundaries, and because that's what we do as artists. I mean, a lot of people think of what we do as creatives as being this limitless, fearless act of miracle that we are so spontaneous. But the thing is, spontaneity actually does work with a series of parameters. And yeah, you're gonna have jokes and sketches and skits that are gonna fail. That you just got to accept that. But for every one failure, you're gonna have at least 5 triumphs. And it's those triumphs that are going to push you forward in whatever creative endeavor you're taking, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for you as the artist, or whether you are working with a business. I mean, you look at the ad campaigns for Apple. You look at the ad campaigns for Geico. Oh my God, who would have ever thought insurance commercials were some of the most funniest things you would ever watch? I just saw one recently where it was Dennis Haybert was on a set. It's you can tell it's Dennis Haybert being like a cop, and there's another cop, and they're talking, and they're in an accident, and suddenly the guy said, "Yeah, but the good news is I've got safe driver's insurance from Allstate, so I'm covered." And then you hear "cut," and you back up, and it's a set, and the woman says, "Your line is, but there's no brake fluid left here." And he goes, and the actor kind of looks blank and looks at Dennis Haybert, and he goes, "Did I do the insurance thing again?" And Dennis Haybert, who is an accomplished actor, but now is known as the voice of Allstate, he just kind of, "Yeah, you did." And it was just so effing brilliant. And I'm sitting there going, when did insurance companies become so damn funny? And
I love it.
And that's what you're seeing, is that sometimes there's a triumph in my video game Destiny called high risk, high reward. It is the first time I'd ever heard that phrase. And high risk, high reward is truly the mantra of creatives, especially on the corporate field. And I think that if executives were to trust their creatives just a little more, I think they'd be really impressed with the results.
I'm so glad that you said that, first of all, because it leads me perfectly into my next question. But also, yeah, I think there's so much, we come back to that idea of trust, and yet there are bosses out there, there are business leaders out there who want innovation, but then are afraid of creatives innovating, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. So you've done both, and you continue to do both. Be an innovator and also work in the business world. What do you recommend to a business leader who wants to work with creatives, might be nervous about working with creatives, or might be nervous about bringing on creatives onto staff? What would you say to someone who's like, yeah, I'd like to dip my toe into that water, but I don't know how to do it so that it's going to work.
Get over yourself. Your job is fine. That'd be the thing I would tell them. I mean, if I had a room of executives, that'd be the first thing I tell them. But I get over yourself. Your job is fine. That's the first thing I tell them. The second thing I would tell them is you get what you pay for. A perfect example is when I have gone for positions before, and I will give my salary. I will give my salary expectations. And I'll get an email from the place a couple of weeks later, and it basically says, we have gone with someone with better qualifications. And at first I'm like, I would get angry about it, because I would say, oh, really? You're going with someone with better qualifications, meaning they have been published multiple times, not self-published, but published multiple times by some of the biggest publishers in social media. And they have the track record that I have. They've talked about this stuff overseas. They've talked about this stuff from coast to coast. And you're telling me you found somebody with better qualifications than me when it comes to social media. And then I look at what I was asking and I go, oh, they found somebody cheaper.
Mm.
And that's fine. If you want to save money by doing that, that's fine. But you get what you pay for, which means I guarantee you, after that person clocks about a year or two with you, they're out. And you're right back where you started from, and you got to get somebody back in there. And cycling through creatives every 2 to 4 years, that's not the creative's fault. That is not the creative's fault. 9 times out of 10, that is the employer's fault. They're not treating the creative properly. They're not giving them they're not giving them the tools to do the job. They're not paying them enough. And if you pay your people well and you treat them with a decorum of respect, going back to that incident with the executive VP of the for-profit school, I don't mind saying this. It was my last day there. And I was talking to human resources. We were doing our exit interview, and the woman said to me, did you have any problems, or did you have any issues, any bad experiences while working at this school? And I said, yeah, I was bullied on a constant basis from this one particular individual. And the person from HR was stunned. She was like, T, that's why we're here. Why didn't you say anything? And I just kept a straight face, and I said, it's really hard to turn in someone into HR when they're married to the CEO. And the woman went to open her mouth, and she stopped, and she was like, fair point.
Yeah.
And we moved on. I mean, the thing was, that incident where she said, stay in your lane to me, that was one. And that particular instance was one of the nicer incidents I had with this woman. And it all was because she did not like the fact that I knew something she didn't. And I've had that happen repeated times, not just even as a person in social media. I had it happen all the time in theater. I had it. I don't mind saying it. I had a director at the Maryland Ren Fair who did not take kindly to me. And it was mainly because I knew stuff that he didn't, and he didn't like that. There were people that there were people that I've worked with who are really intimidated because they're afraid that they're not going to shine as much as this as this other person who is creative in different ways, And I'm the exact opposite. My thoughts are, you know what? Surround me with talented people. Surround me with talented people, and I guarantee you I'll still shine. Because it's not I mean, I can talk about code.gov. That was what happened. I was surrounded by really talented people, and I still managed to shine. I surrounded myself with talented people when I directed Tempest at James Madison, and I still managed to shine. I was surrounded by extremely talented people in many of the events that I did at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, and I still managed to shine. And it was because I was part of a bigger a bigger product, a bigger production. And I get aggravated when I meet these people who are intimidated by me and what I can do. And I just tell them, look, if you lose your job, it's not because of me. It's because you're not doing your job. And I feel exactly about that in the corporate industry as I do in theater, as I do in writing. I'm like, look, if this is your cross to bear, if you have a tough time with me, I will know if I'm being a jerk or not. And last time I checked, I'm not a jerk. I tend to be a pretty decent guy. And so going through that as an actor, I think kind of prepared me for the corporate world. So when I meet an exec that really just does not take a shine to me, I'm just like, oh, okay. You think I'm here for your job. I don't want your job. I want to excel in this position for as long as I can. If somebody comes with a better offer, fantastic, but it better beat what I'm doing here and what I'm doing now. So when people go with the cheaper option, the one thing they're not buying with that is loyalty. Bottom line, they're not buying loyalty by any stretch of the imagination. That person will be gone within, if they're lucky, they'll get 2 years out of them. So you really have to, I think that's what I would tell executives. Stop being intimidated by creativity and just embrace it. And, it goes back to what Kenneth Branagh said. When Kenneth Branagh directed Henry V, people saw that as his first film, and they said, what did you do? How did you pull that off? And he said, I hired people more talented than me, and then I took credit for their work. Mm-hmm. And he was honest with that. He was honest about it, and that's I've always adhered to the Kenneth Branagh approach to things.
And it's a great approach, because, like, to me, the job of a leader is to help their people shine. That's right. That's my job. I'm the leader and manager of one of the premier caroling groups in the nation, and my job isn't to be the star. My job is to make sure they can be stars, and I get to ride in on their coattails.
Exactly.
It's actually very lovely. But there's something that you said that I'm worrying at it, and that is this idea of fear of, for example, when a boss or a business leader has fear around other people doing better or doing more. What can we do? How do we assuage those fears? And I get the whole get over it thing. I want to be able to say that too, but looking at it from the perspective of how do we help business leaders rise to that? What can we say? What can we do as creative people to help somebody who's a CEO understand better that there are real quantifiable benefits to working with creatives and to allowing those creatives to really soar?
That's a tough one, because there are two types of leaders. There are leaders that haven't forgotten where they started, and they know how to motivate people to be better at their position and to excel at their position. Then you have the other leaders who have reached a certain position, and they're like, okay, what's past is done. That's in the past. I am now here. What I say goes, and I will not be questioned. There's no in between. Mm-hmm. Every place I've gone, it has been one or the other. And not just the head CEOs or anything like that. I'm talking about the VPs and even the directors underneath them. Those there are only two. There are two types of leaders, and I keep referring to code.gov and in a positive light, in that these were the leaders that I worked with that allowed me to thrive and excel at the for-profit university that I was working at. The EVP and to some extent the CEO really did not want to even talk to me about any of the options. Perfect example, the CEO had a podcast. CEO had a podcast of his radio show, and it was a mess. It was a mess, not from a content standpoint, but from a technical standpoint. The listing on Apple was completely off. It was just it hadn't been updated. It was terrible show art. It was not representative of the podcast or the content, and it desperately needed to be updated. The other problem was that it wasn't found anywhere on the website. The only place you could find a reference to the podcast was on Apple. So if you wanted to find the podcast from the website, the main website, and this is the CEO's, this was the CEO's podcast. There were no links anywhere on the website that pointed to the podcast. And I went to my boss and I said, let me talk to him about it. And my boss said, absolutely, unequivocally, no. And I went, why? And he said, because it's his podcast and no one else is supposed to touch it. He knows best. And I just kind of stared at him. I said, let me get this straight. The guy who wrote Podcasting for Dummies is working for him. And I have 15 years, well, at that time, 10 years of experience doing podcasts. He's been podcasting for, I think they told me it started like 4 or 5 years ago. So I had 10 years of experience in podcasting. I had Podcasting for Dummies 3 editions under my belt. But this guy did not want me anywhere near his podcast. And that says a lot. Now, that being said, my VP was always encouraging me to try something different, always encouraging me. And he told me, he said, it's real simple. If you are good at your job, it makes me look good. So do what you do, T, and get the work done. I'm happy either way. That's the sign of a good leader. But when you run into, and the as creatives, it's really hard to navigate, because you may not know that there are people above you that are going to react the way I was talking about, and they're going to be set in their ways. And what's really frustrating is talking to those people and bringing the only thing I could recommend is bring facts to them, not creativity, but bring them facts. At my very first job as a social media go-to director, I was asked to help out the cybersecurity firm that I was working with. They were going to do a Facebook game, and it was based on an idea that I pitched to them. I was like, I got this idea while going to the Spy Museum. The idea was that it would be a Facebook game where you're playing a spy and you have to protect your identity, but you have to deal with hackers and phishers and keyloggers and all these different things. And the way you beat the game is you made it all the way to your destination by keeping your identity intact. And you could use some of our products along the way to help you. And everybody loved it. But then it got to sales. And they were like, well, instead of doing this, let's do this instead. Instead of being a spy, you're running the administration of a hospital. And I was like, a hospital? And I found out later it was because they were trying to get their product out to more people in the medical industry. So we went from doing a James Bond style adventure to you're working IT for a hospital. Already, I'm just like, you want people to play the game, right? You want it to be an interesting experience. Then they were like, okay, we're going to go with this vendor. And I went, okay, what can I bring to the table? Nothing. And they completely the salespeople shut me out completely. I said, oh, okay. So it had been my idea, and the only thing that remained of my idea was the fact that it was a Facebook game. That's about it. Oh, and you're protecting your identity, but you aren't protecting your identity. You're doing it now for the entire hospital. And then they said, okay, T, we still want you involved in the project, so we'll have you come on as a consultant, and you'll be there in our sales meetings. So, it's coming time. We're a month out. Has anybody seen any? And I ask, has anybody seen any upcoming stuff on the project on this Facebook game? Nope. Okay. 3 weeks before launch. Has anybody seen any prototypes for the game? Nope. 2 weeks before the launch.
Oh my.
We need to see some products before this game. They're saying they're working on it. 1 week before launch. Do we have anything? Well, we have outlines. I'm like, outlines? He's like, yeah, we're having outlines. They're wireframes of what people are going to do when they play the game. Can I see them? Sure. They didn't work on a Mac.
Oh, no.
I'm like, all right. So I went to my boss. I went to my immediate boss, and I just said, I'm just going to tell you this isn't going to work. And she said to me, and I quote, "You're too close to it, T. They'll make it work." And that's when I realized I had been spinning my wheels all this time.
Yeah.
So I stepped away from it. Launch date came. I saw someone from sales, and I said, "So how did the game launch go?" And I just saw his face just go red. And he said, "Well, we spent a lot of money on it. It didn't work." And I said, "Okay, so what's the vendor going to do?" They said, "We'll get back in this." The vendor said, "We'll get back in touch with them." Like, oh, okay. Never heard a word from it after that. And that's where the failure to launch happens.
Mm-hmm.
Is when people get so intimidated by creatives that they think their job, if one creative is threatening your job is already on shaky ground to begin with. And there's, I brought to them facts. We need to have prototypes. We need to have the look to see how the game is going to perform, and we can't do it the day before. But I kept getting dismissed. But at least I had the paper trail to say I was asking the right questions. Nobody else had answers for me, so it couldn't come back and fall into the creative lap that they did something wrong. It's in trying to talk to people that don't understand creatives or even understand the creative process. It's always going to be an uphill battle. It's and there's a moment where the patience is going to wear thin, and you basically have to brace for impact. But just make sure that you can cover yourself and your own bases so that you can say, I put these questions forward and never got an answer. So it's a rough skill. It's a rough skill.
It is. And when you're in it and you're going, I'm raising the flag, I'm telling you what needs to happen, and it's falling on deaf ears, at some point it also shakes your own sort of sense of what you're doing and who you are and what you're capable of, because there's so much pushback, and yet it's fear-based. It sounds to me like your experiences, they were very afraid, and their way of dealing with it was sticking their heads in the sand and going la 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 la, because
the vendor says he's coming. The vendor says he's coming back with something. The vendor says he's coming back with something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, you're right. It's the head in the sand, and it's really rough. It's really, really hard.
It is. And yet, individual people who are creating games and creating content and creating, writing books and making movies and whatever, you learn pretty quickly that you have to test. You have to test it. You have to test it. You have to test it. And I can say it about 25 more times, and that's how it is.
Yeah.
And yet, we're out there. Everybody's out there. Everybody who wants to. For the most part, if you have a phone, you can make movies. You can have a podcast. You can do so many things. You can, as you put it, be an entertainer or a content creator. So I'm switching things around. What do we do as content creators in 2020? And this just stops this from being an evergreen episode. Oh, well. But anyway, so as content creators in the beginning of the 2020s, how do we do it? What is your recommendation as someone who's been doing social media for so long, who's written books on it? And I do still want to talk about social podcasting for dummies and Discord for dummies. I can't believe that we haven't even covered those yet. What do we do? What is the best way to do it? And what should the goal be? Like what does success look like as a content creator nowadays?
Oh, wow. Well, what I was going to say is, initially the thing you need to tell yourself is don't let the bastards win. Don't let the bastards win. The success for content creation, I think, is when you have that magic moment. When you have that magic moment and you basically just, and this ties back to don't let the bastards win. Success is when, even if no one else acknowledges it, you're right. When you land that magic moment. Going back to the place that I just talked about, I actually think I can talk about this place because it no longer exists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this place was called Intersections, and they dealt with identity theft protection and things like that. And I remember we were working with a PR firm that was pretty ridiculous. I was on a call with them, and the self-proclaimed cybersecurity expert that worked at this PR firm was joking. She was chuckling about how she gave her 3-year-old, or sort of 4-year-old, basically gave her 3 or 4-year-old access to her phone, and the 3-year-old put a password on it. And she hadn't done that. She was like, I don't need a password on my phone. And I'm like, oh my God, and you're the cybersecurity expert. And it just dawned on me, though, all these new tech toys were coming out onto the market that year. And it made me wonder how many people don't know how certain things work on your phone or on that or whatever. How do you make this stuff secure? So I wrote a 3-part blog post about securing new tech for digital Christmas. And it ran all through the month of December. And we got picked up by PC Magazine. It got syndicated by PC Magazine. Biggest coup we had ever had. And the weird thing is that this PR firm was talking about all these places where we were mentioned, and we talked about with we got into the USA Today, we got here, but we never saw it. We just got a slide with a bunch of headlines saying, oh yeah, it said that we appeared in these things on these dates. And I'm sitting there going, oh, media, why wasn't it about these dates? And I said this repeatedly. Why didn't anybody tell me? Because I would have easily tweeted the articles that we were cited in. I found out later they were including advertisements. It wasn't interviews, it was advertisements they were citing. And I was like, wow, that is such a rope-a-dope that I can't even begin to describe that. And but when I had PC Magazine and they were syndicating my blog posts, that was tangible. I could actually say, here we are in PC Magazine. Boom. And it was because I took an idea and ran with it. No one asked me to write an article on securing your digital tech for the holidays. I did that on my own. And I had everything cited. I had everything set out. Me continuing to push forward. When I was at another for-profit university, it was Halloween, and I remember I came dressed for Halloween, and I came dressed as one of the Knights of the Round Table from Monty Python, and I had even I had the rabbit on my arm. I had blood around the arm, and I had I took a picture of myself, or somebody took a picture of me with the rabbit attached to my arm, and I was threatening with my sword. And I went on ahead and created a meme. And I said, that moment when you realize everything we know about medieval history comes from Monty Python. And I posted it with the APUS branding, with APUS branding, with the university's branding, and it went viral. And my boss came back to me and said, "I don't know what you did, but you need to do that again." And the reason why I branded it with our university was because we teach medieval history, and it was a huge success. And I wound up getting numbers for that university that they had never seen before. Again, it was because I stuck by my guns. From a creator's perspective, I stuck by my guns, and I kept doing what I was doing because I believe I had that much self-esteem when it comes to me as a creative individual. So when I say don't let the bastards win, don't let them stomp the creativity out of you. When you find bosses that truly appreciate what you do, people like Alvin Salehi, they may be rare out there, but when you find them, you will push yourself creatively. And I did just that. And that's the thing that I think was probably the best thing about working at code.gov. It was just such a phenomenal positive experience because of that, because I was being encouraged to challenge myself. And that's what I mean by don't let the bastards win.
Yes. I love it. I love it. No, I really do, because there is it feels weirdly like a battle. It feels weirdly
no, it
like
is a battle. It is a battle. It is a battle. And it's frustrating because you can pin more times on when taking a creative chance works on the ones that fail. And the thing is, I think sometimes executives, higher ups, directors, managers, they tend to focus more on the failures and not look at the successes. And it's very frustrating. So yes, it is a battle, and it's a continuing battle, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it is interesting because when we're out there and you did Monty Python, but it shows not only a creative part, but also a human part, a human part of this business, of that it's not just a company, that it's people, and creatives have a really unique perspective on that and can bring so much when they are allowed to. And I think that's something that that when you work in collaboration with creatives, when creatives get to feel like their ideas are valued and valuable, then you can make all sorts of magic. Then it becomes an actual collaboration, which I think is incredible and can be so powerful and so effective. So I want to talk to you about something that is interesting to me, and I'd love to get your perspective on this. As writing yet the other book in the triumvirate of the For Dummies books that you've written, let me ask you about Discord. Discord is, from what I understand, I've only used it once, and that's not because I don't want to, but because it hasn't really been on my sphere. But I have started for the very first time. I am playing a Dungeons and Dragons like game online with your friend and mine, Mike Doherty is my game master, because I've never done it before. So we tried to use Discord as our game chat platform, and that's all I know it as. But you've written an entire book on it. So talk to me about Discord. What is it? How do we use it? How can creatives make use of this other new platform that can give you, it looks like, a real opportunity to collaborate?
Yes, I think Discord is best described by the guy who was our technical editor, a guy by the name of Dan Finity. He's a guy I know from Twitch, and I got to know Discord through Twitch, because as a streamer, you basically cultivate your community beyond and in between your streams by going onto Discord and continuing the conversation there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, and so, Discord, according to Dan Finity, he described it as Facebook for gamers. And when he said that, I totally understood what he meant. Because it is a discussion platform similar to Facebook, but you also have the audio aspect of it, and now you have video aspects of it. Whenever I do my gaming podcast, Happy Hour from the Tower, I'm using Discord to bring everybody in so we can have our discussion, and it's videoed, and we stream that video on to Discord, and it's all private and it's all secure. And then you've got when you set yourself up on Discord, you get what you design for yourself a server, and that server can be very specific topics. And you can have topics on food, you can have topics on movies, you can have topics on podcasts. You can give people a platform to where if they want to promote their stream or their podcast, they can do so as well. So Discord is where you go to build the community around your podcast or around Twitch. It is also a place where you can collaborate with other people if you're doing a special fundraiser. You can bring people in, and you can have open discussions and open meetings on the audio channels. You can also use Discord as safe spaces for people to talk, but they really just want to unload or vent out or something. The Discord is a communications platform at its core.
Okay.
And it really is a community builder. It allows you to cultivate and nourish and build a community, but you have to be an active part of it. You have to, be dropping stuff into your own Discord channels, not all the time, but most of the time. Sometimes, and it's like when you start streaming or you start podcasting, you wonder, is anybody really there? Is anybody really listening? And then you eventually have people that are coming in, and they're saying, hey, how's your day? How are things going? And that, for example, when you go to my Discord,
what is your Discord?
My Discord is T's Not So Secret Layer. That's what it's called, T's Not So Secret Layer. And what you can do is you can, and that's now this is where Discord is kind of Discord is very disconcerting for some people, because it's not like you go to a Facebook group or you go to a Facebook page or something like that, and you're like, oh, I'm in, and you just, and then that's it. You have to be invited, or you have to click onto an open invite to join someone's server. And the reason why people are encouraged to do private invite servers versus full-on public servers is that when you have public servers, it's like the difference between trying to read the unfiltered Facebook, the unfiltered Twitch, try again, so many platforms, the unfiltered Twitter feed versus looking at only the Twitter feed that has mentions of you. So, or if you're using lists, when you've got a public server, it's basically Discord unplugged, and everybody has access to you.
Right.
But like, for example, if I wanted to invite you to the server, so what I'd do is I'd go and I'd say, all right, let me go ahead and let me go to invite people. And anybody in my server can do this. They can invite people to the server. And during my stream, you'll see people, you'll see it in my stream window. It'll say, hey, join us in Discord. And then you click on the link. Or I can just go ahead and I can say, yeah, create one. And then in your chat right now in Zoom, you go there, you click on that, and then that'll take you through the steps. The link that I just sent you in your group chat for Zoom, that's the invite for Discord, and and it's good for a day.
Okay.
But I can set it up to where they're good, till infinity. And that's the thing, is that you can either make them, you can make your invites last a day. You can make them last an hour. You can make them last till the sun burns out. But the idea is that you invite people to your server, they join, and then the stuff you can talk about on here ranges from everything to to just general chit chat, to stuff for specifically for Twitch subs, stuff specifically for Destiny, since that's the one I play a lot. I have content tech, I have pet selfies, I have food, I have other games. So there are all these specific channels that you create that open up for discussion. And some are more active than others. And that's the thing, is that you go on these channels and you create content, but eventually the people in your stream will also be creating content for Discord as well. And they will start up their own conversations. And that's the thing, is that Discord is a platform where it can be based around your stream or your podcast or both. It can be based around a cause like Guardians Mental Health or Gaming for Pits or St. Jude or Destiny. There are all different kinds of Discord servers that are out there. Streamlabs, which is a streaming software package that you get that will help you stream. Streamlabs does all their tech support through Discord. You join their Discord, you scroll down, you will more or less find what's the problem with your Streamlabs, and then that's it. It's all taken care of. So yeah, there's a lot of Discord is a very promising platform. It was originally designed to provide comms, reliable, stable comms for video games. It has blossomed into something so much more. And people are now using it to do private classes. They're doing it for seminars. And and the Discord for Dummies book is exactly that was really for me. I wrote that for me. I wrote that because I wanted to go really deep into Discord and find out how to make it work. And so I wrote a book about it. and the more I discovered about Discord, the more I'm like, there's a lot to this platform. And just like with Twitch and with podcasting, there's a lot of potential behind it. When going into it though, you have to think, okay, I am when I start this off, it's going to be very quiet. So start from very humble beginnings, then slowly start building up on what you want to do.
Okay. That's good advice. But here's the thing. One of the things that is fascinating me about everything that you're saying is it's about communication. It's about the back and forth between you and the people who are your fans or your subs, and then you follow other people and you're a fan and or perhaps a sub of things that they're doing. And Discord provides you a platform where you can all talk together. Is that right? A fair assessment? Okay. So
yes.
So what are some of the not so savory aspects of using that? Because that, like you said, it starts quiet, and I get that. Well, and you said also that these are younger people's platforms and that you should be ready for snark and things like that. What happens in the times when it's not such a positive experience? What are the things that do happen, and what recourse does someone have if something not so positive happens on either Twitch or Discord? Like what do you do? What are the safety measures there?
Well, I would say this for not just Discord or even Twitch, any platform, Facebook, Facebook, Twitter, so on. If you get someone that is spouting really negative talk, you can and Discord, I'll give Discord credit. Discord is very different from Facebook, Twitter, and others. Most of the other platforms that are out there now, granted, Twitter and Facebook have caught up to this, but at one time it was pretty much you either ban the person or you let them spew whatever it is they're spewing, whatever toxins they're spewing. Discord does it a little differently. Discord's like, okay, you know what? You got somebody that is acting a little unruly, someone that's saying stuff that is really inappropriate. But let's say you know these people. Well, for example, if I want to, I can go ahead and I can kick somebody out of the server. And what the kick does is that kicking someone out of the server basically means that I have kicked them out of the server. They can be invited back by other people, but I have kicked them out of the server. They have to get an invitation to come back in. They're not banned, but they can come back in. I also have the option of blocking somebody if I really don't want to listen to them. I will not see their messages. Everyone else will.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the last one. There's banning somebody. When you ban someone on Discord, they are out of the pool for good. They are not coming back. And
your server. To your
server. Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
They're out. And I'll give you an example of when basically something like that, or two instances where that happened. So there were some people chatting about some things that were going wrong in the game that I was talking about, the game that I play, and somebody that has been in our chat before. I know them from Discord. Most of the time they've been pretty positive. Well, they were pretty triggered,
mm-hmm.
and they basically said, it's taking everything in my power not to just grab a gun, go down there, and really just start opening fire. The problem was this happened a week after a fatal school shooting. I immediately took down the post, talked to the guy privately, and said, "You cannot make those kind of statements on this channel. You cannot. I don't care about your First Amendment rights. This is my channel, my rules. If you don't like it, you can leave, but you cannot say stuff like that." And he apologized. He apologized to me, and he said he wouldn't let it happen again. I said, "Okay, you don't have to say anything on the stream. I'll take care of it." And then I posted a message in that thread that said, saying something like that is absolutely and positively out of play. That is not going to happen here, because we can't, that sort of thing, if it's said here, could be taken seriously. It could get me into trouble, but more to the point, it could get you in trouble. And I don't want to get anybody in trouble, especially here. And we had a good discussion about it, and everything was good. This is what you have to do. When it gets unsavory, you have to take a forward position and be the moderator. Take responsibility for your platform. Now, that was a situation that was bad, and we diffused it. Second situation I can talk about, because this happened just last week. My daughter is because my daughter knows Discord way better than an old man does. She is one of my moderators, and she banned someone from my server without telling me. That person came into my chat while I'm streaming live on my chat and said, I'm banned from Discord. I don't know why." And I said, "Wait, you're banned from Discord?" And he said, "Yeah, your server. I can't get into your server for some reason." And I nodded and said, "Okay." And I was going to look into it, but then I remembered my daughter was one of my mods. So I went to my daughter. So I said, "Hang on a minute." I had to use the bathroom anyway. So I put up the "be right back" screen, went to the bathroom, went up, and I went to my daughter and I said, "Was this person banned?" And she told me why. And I went, "Oh." I went back onto my stream, and I said to the guy on my stream, I said, "Did you call my daughter an ungentlemanly term?" That's the best way I could say it. I didn't want to repeat it, but I basically said, did you refer to my daughter in an unsavory, ungentlemanly way?" And there was a pause, and then he said, "Yes, and I stand by it." And I went, "Oh, in that case," and I banned him from Twitch. I banned him from my Twitch channel.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what you have to do when things go south. You, in any platform, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Discord, you can't be afraid of the ban button. You cannot be afraid of it. And people are like, "Well, I don't want to piss anybody off." No, it's okay. Piss them off. They're being jerks, and they're being jerks for a reason. They think they can get away with it.
Right.
And you have to set the rules. And that's the other thing. When you accept an invitation, when you accept an invitation to my, and I just saw that you did.
I did.
But you saw what I did. When you first get onto the channel, you're immediately taken to a welcome screen.
Uh-huh.
And then there's all these rules. And the rules are this, that. And then you say, okay, if you acknowledge all the rules by clicking onto the happy steampunk symbol, that then unlocks everything else in your in the Discord channel. Now, for some reason, I got to check this because you were supposed to be assigned a role, and that's something I've got to fix. But when you go through that, I think the third party programming that I've done has gotten a little squirrely. But after you acknowledge all the things in my rules, it will then open everything else in the stream, and it will say, okay, then here's everything you have access to. You'll notice that some of the rooms are private, some of the rooms are not, and all these things it all comes out in the wash about like, okay, well, and everybody's assigned different roles for different things. So you have, that's one thing that Discord really went out of their way to do. They want to give you and your moderators control. And it's something, it's important. It's valued. It's very valued. And with Twitch, it's the same thing. When, it's tough enough to pay attention to chat and interact with chat and play your video game. But when you're playing chat in your video game and then you get a troll that comes in and starts trying to mix it up with your chat, this is why it's important to have people that are regulars to your stream and they're moderators. They're the ones that will take care of this when you can't. But never be afraid to take charge of your platform. Never be afraid of that. Otherwise, it becomes a free-for-all. Yes, it's social media, and you shouldn't forget the social aspect of social media, but it is also your platform. And when people say, well, I have a First Amendment right, yes, you have a First Amendment right to say what you just said. You also have the First Amendment right to deal with the consequences that are going to come after you say it.
Absolutely. And you know what? You can express yourself, but that doesn't mean I have to listen. So that's the way I look at it. That is how I approach most of social media. You're allowed to say it. I'm not going to tell you can't say it, but I do not have to listen, and I most definitely don't have to in any way acknowledge or promote what you said. So
exactly.
So let's talk about that idea of social media and content creation a little further. Because I'm interested in talking to you as long as you're willing to talk to me. So we can talk until tomorrow. So you said something that I think is fascinating, and I want to talk about this real quickly before I know you probably want to have dinner at some point. You said being an author means more than just being able to write more than what you love. It means being a marketer, a promoter, a public speaker. And it means being versed in things other than just grammar. Can you talk about what that means? How does an author use these other skills as part of being an author or any kind of creative? How do they serve the creative person to do all of these other things?
One of the things I think that people tend to forget is that when it comes to being a creative, you have to be good at tooting your own horn. If you are not promoting yourself, if you are not putting out there that that you're about to go live on Twitch, that you got a new podcast up or anything like that, then you're pretty much going to be creative in a bubble. And that's the thing that I think some authors tend to forget as well. They tend to forget that I remember hearing, some people like in 2006, 2007 saying things like, oh yeah, marketing is someone else's job. It's not my job. And I was pretty appalled by that. Now, granted, if you're someone that's got clout, if you're someone that's got like a severe, like an incredible track record, if you're somebody like people like J.K. Rowling, people like Stephen King, people like George R.R. Martin, they don't have to promote themselves because they have already hit that upper echelon. David Badalci probably never has to promote himself if he didn't want to. But the truth of the matter is that when you're when you are the Isolde Trachtenbergs, or you're the T. Morrises of the author world, and you haven't had that runaway New York Times bestselling book that has become something new from HBO or has been picked up by Warner Brothers, then guess what? You've got to let people know what you're doing. You cannot be afraid of promotion. And that's the thing, is that I think people are afraid of promotion. They're afraid of promotion because they're worried that their message will fall on deaf ears. And it's sometimes, yes, I will tell people on Instagram, I'm on a stream right now. I'm getting ready to stream, and it'll be crickets in response. I will tell people I got a new podcast up, and crickets in response. I mean, it is very frustrating. It is very disheartening because you want people to react and to say, hey, this is awesome. This is great. But this is what you have to do. You have to be diligent, and you have to not be afraid to go to a book signing, go marketing, buy an ad somewhere. And if your finances are strapped, then you've got to look at other ways of promotion. And that's when you start looking at social media, start looking at podcasting. And I remember hearing some of the old guard of the science fiction writers at Balticon. I've heard some people say some ridiculous stuff. Oh, social media is a distraction. I don't need it. No, you need it. You need it if you want word to get out. There are authors that basically say things like, "Oh, I let the book sell itself," and I'm like, then not a lot of copies are going to go. You got to find events to do. You got, and that's that, particularly now in the COVID-19 world that we're in. You've got to be creative on letting people know when you've got books for sale. And like if I get rated by people, I always introduce myself. My name is T. You can call me T. You can call me T Mach. You can call me Twitch Dad. And I'm not a gamer that writes. I'm a writer that games. And I'm responsible for. And I have the books that I tend to be pushing, in particular Twitch and Discord for Dummies. I have them right next to where I game, so I can reach over and I can hold them up to the camera and let people know these are real books and they're on sale. And people like to say, "Oh, what are you promoting now?" And some people have said, "Yeah, T's a promotion machine." It's marketing 101.
And I take that as a compliment.
Yes, you should. No, you should.
Absolutely.
Because it's the same thing. When you have a new podcast up, I see the announcement. When you've got something new that you've been writing or working on, you have an announcement. And I really think that is the separation between a writer and being an author. A writer writes. An author is everything. They write, they promote, they let people know. And there's a fine line. I will say there is a fine line. I don't follow, as we've been saying in social media for writers, I don't follow Twitch accounts where every tweet is a promotion for their book.
Mm-hmm.
That person doesn't get it. Now, on the other hand, if you've got one promotion for your book and then you've got 4 other tweets that basically is talking about your day, that's different. I realize you're actually taking an active role in this, and so I really think that you have to, you have to find the fine line between promotion and personality. But you do need to find that fine line, and you need to let people know, oh yeah, I'm doing I'm doing this at this particular time, and you let people continuously let people know, this is what I'm doing right now. This is what I'm doing right now. This is what I'm doing right now, because you can't rely on one platform to get the word out. For people to say, oh, well, I do it on Facebook. Well, yeah, it's great. But like, for example, what we talked about at the very beginning, when Virginia Living named me and Pip in this article, I put it on my Facebook author page. Then I put it later on my Facebook page. And then I put it on Twitter. And then I put it on Discord. I put it everywhere I could find where to put it, because that's what you do. You have to promote. And and if you're only using one platform or 2 platforms, you're missing out on a lot of other potential platforms where you can build a community and where you can take your message to a wider audience. So that's what I meant by that. You have to make sure that you're constantly not necessarily shilling yourself, but you're constantly looking for, how can I leverage this? In my case, Twitch. How can I leverage Twitch to help me out in my writing career? And I can tell you right now, I have sold more books on Twitch and Discord for Dummies and Podcasting for Dummies through Twitch, just because people are like, oh yeah, I want to support this guy, or I want to learn more about what he does, or I love steampunk, I want to read his stuff.
And that point is well taken, because one of the things that, I'm not coming on you, T, but you're a very charming, very likable person, and you succeed. And the point for me is that you allow that to shine through in your work and in your promotion. Your promo comes across. Now, I know everybody has bad days, and there are days when you've stubbed your toe and you want to say wreck and freck and flirt, whatever it is. It does that's fine. But it seems to me that one of the other things, and you said this, the difference between promotion and personality. And I think personality, if it's authentic, it sells, and it's not selling when it sells, if that makes sense.
And there are times where I do have to, you still have to police yourself, because eventually you will find, is this a hill I want to die on? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, there is, at the time of this recording, there's been a lot of backlash with J.K. Rowling and some of the things that she has expressed concerning transgender and transgender issues. Mm-hmm. And I have thoughts about it, both positive and negative. I have thoughts about it. And I'm like, okay, is that a mantle I want to pick up? Is that a hill I want to die on? And sometimes you just have to say, okay, you know what? I'm stepping away from this one. Mm-hmm. I'm stepping away from this one. And that's okay. You should be fine picking and choosing what it is you're going to address. Now, I did step up. I did put myself out there, and I stepped up in defense of Chuck Wendig. Chuck Wendig is a friend of mine. I consider him a friend. Mm-hmm. And I have had the pleasure of reading his books, and I love the guy. Mm-hmm. I am stunned that there are people stupid enough to believe that his one complaint took down the Internet Archive. First off, Chuck is not a Bond villain. He does not have a white cat and a high back chair, and he's petting the cat saying, bring down the Internet Archive. It was the publishers that do that. And it wasn't just the publishers. It was dozens, hundreds of authors signing petitions and basically going to their publishers saying, you need to do something about this because this is cutting into my profits. And it was that online privilege. I want it for free. I don't want to pay for this book. And the people that complain the most about pirated books and the taking down of those pirated sites, places like Pirate Bay, places like Internet Archive, even if the intention of Internet Archive was well-meaning, it went south when they started carrying titles that they did not have permission to use. That's piracy, bottom line. And whatever you think about accessibility for the books or anything like that, piracy is piracy is piracy. That cuts into my bottom line. And I need to make sure that my kid is fed, and my wife is fed, and that there's a roof over our head. And book piracy cuts into that. Book piracy can also prevent books from getting sequels. So you can love a series, but if it gets pirated, chances are it is going to that series is going to die on a vine because nobody's buying the books. Mm-hmm. And again, when it comes to buying of said books, the people who pirate books probably won't pay for the books to begin with.
Right.
That's a lost cause. I'm not insisting that these people, if they really want my book, they can go in a library. And if it's on a wait list, then okay, get on a wait list. But the fact that there were people that honestly piled on to Chuck Wendig because they believed that he was solely responsible for the shutdown of the Internet Archive was ridiculous, and also smacked of internet privilege. I don't, if they're releasing this book, then it's out in the public and I deserve it. Yes, it is in the public, and you can have access to it, but you have to pay for it. But if you don't want to bother with buying the book, or if you don't want to bother with with going to your local library and supporting your local library, then F you, you're not allowed, then F you, don't read the damn book. But if you think you're entitled to it just because a publisher says, yeah, we're going to print this, that doesn't make it yours. That does not make it yours by any stretch. And that is a hill I'm going to die on. And that's a hill that I'm going to talk about. You should never be afraid of being political. You should never be afraid of that stuff. But when it comes to those dividing lines, you've got to ask yourself in the 11th hour, do I want to go there? And if you go there and you find yourself in over your head, then you got to have an exit plan, if that makes sense.
Oh, it really does. And I think it's only the wise and responsible thing to do, to decide for yourself what issues are going to be the ones that you address and that you want to be public about. Because, I find that doing this show, for example, I've done, I don't know, a few hundred episodes now, and it is, there have been times when topics have come up that are challenging, and I don't shy away from challenging topics, but there are definitely topics where I go, you know what, this isn't my bailiwick. This is not what I'm here to talk about. And just recently I did an interview, and the person I was interviewing said, I don't want to talk about politics on this, because I always ask, is there something you don't want to talk about? And he said, yeah, I don't want to talk about politics. And I said, that's great. I don't mind getting political. I will get political. I'm political all over my social media, but I cannot expect anyone else to do that. And so that's part of being a good host, is to go, absolutely, I respect your decision on this, and we don't have to talk about, and I'm not going to bring it up. And so when I talk to you, again, the third book in the triumvirate, when we talk about podcasting for dummies, the first time I read through the book, I was probably about a year before I started my podcast, which I started in 2016, I think 2015, I don't remember. And I read it, I guess 2014 must have been. And there was such a wealth of information. Some of it I think has changed. I think podcasting as an industry has ballooned and grown.
Like you wouldn't believe.
It's incredible, and part of it is the ease of access. If you've got a phone, you can have a podcast. So talk to me about podcasting, where, I know this is a tiny topic, T, a very small topic. Talk to me about podcasting, where it's been, where it is, and where you think it's going.
Oh boy.
I know.
Well, I will begin this, and this is kind of a humble brag, but this tells me, if you want to know where podcasting is going. So first off, and I've been waxing nostalgic about this because Chuck Tomas and I just finished preliminary work, about 4 weeks in advance on Podcasting for Dummies, the 4th edition.
Wow.
Now, if you would have told me that the 4th edition of Podcasting for Dummies was going to be a thing, I wouldn't have believed you. But here's the story about where we started. I still remember having to tell people back in 2005, 2006, no, you don't need an iPod to listen to a podcast. And I remember that one of the biggest developments that happened around the time between the first and the second edition was that Apple iTunes started recognizing podcasts, and it became overnight literally the big kahuna, the 800-pound gorilla of podcasting and where you found podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember starting all this, and I still have photographs. I just recently put into the 4th edition of Podcasting for Dummies a collage that I created of my 15 years of podcasting. and I look at the microphones that I was using then, I'm looking at the microphones I'm using now, and I'm looking at the equipment, and it's stunning to me. But what's equally stunning is this. So the first edition was in 2006. The second edition was in 2008. Fast forward to 2015. And there has been no expression whatsoever of anything of a new edition or anything like that. Nothing whatsoever.
Wow.
And then I get a royalty check for Podcasting for Dummies. It's 2015, and I get a royalty check, and I'm like, I haven't seen one of these in like 4 or 5 years. I don't think twice about it. Now it's 2016, and I get another paycheck. This one is double the size. And then later in 2016, I get another check, and that's double in size. I said, okay. I need to make a phone call. And out of the blue, I haven't talked to this guy in like, almost a decade, but it was my chief editor, Steve Hayes at Wiley. And I go, Hey, Steve, here's a blast from the past. It's T. Morris. And he was like, wow, man, I was just talking about you. And I said, is it about Podcasting for Dummies? He's like, yeah, we're getting a spike in sales. And I said, dude, the book is over a decade old. We need to give it a new edition. He's like, yes, we do. So while the third edition, so basically we went 2006, 2008, 2017.
Wow.
Nearly 10 years. And that was me and Chuck were pretty honest about it. It wasn't a second edition, a third edition. It was a major rewrite.
Sure.
And we gutted that thing. But the funny thing was that in the third edition of Podcasting for Dummies, we said, we actually have a little call out that basically says, just because you're on Twitch doesn't mean you're podcasting. And we really drew a line in the sand and said, if you don't have this, and this, you're not podcasting. Now in the fourth edition, we basically have an entire chapter dedicated to streaming going, yeah, okay, we know we said this, mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. But here's the thing. Before we even signed on the fourth edition, and this is the humble brag, Steve said to us, we have not seen a renaissance in a title like Podcasting for Dummies and its third edition in the history of Wiley Publishing.
Wow.
And this is a history that goes all the way back to the freaking 80s. These guys, when they first came out, it was a big deal. And they are still considered when you hear people say they're part of culture. They people say, hey, have you got such and such for Dummies? It's just, and you want to throw in for Dummies, because that's where, if there's a book out, chances are there's a Dummies book out about it. Right. And so yeah, when they said that this had a massive renaissance they have never seen in the history of the publisher, I was blown away by that. Absolutely blown away by that. So yeah, I didn't know what to say, except yes, we would love to do a fourth edition of podcasting. And what I see with podcasting is that podcasting continues to reinvent itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still believe that if you were to say, what is a podcast? I would say, well, there's got to be an RSS feed. There's got to be some type of media, and there's got to be a delivery system in which you distribute it. And that is still the case. But now, instead of listening on your computer, now you can listen on your phone. You can listen on your iPad. One of the other things I've noticed, though, is that now the line between podcasting and streaming it's almost paper. It's barely there. Mm-hmm. I mean, now Spotify. I mean, I didn't think anything could get bigger than Apple Podcasts, right? Apple acknowledging podcasts and actually having an app for it. And then Spotify says, oh, you want to have your podcast? Yeah, sure. Come on. You can only have, now one thing they did say was like, you can't have any video episodes. It's got to be all audio. But I'm like, I'll take it. I will gladly take it, because doing video podcasting is a chore. We said that in the second and the third edition. It is a chore because of the size of the files. But now with streaming, you can still say, yeah, I'm podcasting, because now you're recording the podcast, and it'll be available in audio, in an edited audio form, or you can watch the live stream,
right,
and replay. And I'm seeing podcasting like reinvent itself now. It's now becoming a kissing cousin of streaming. And it's really the other way around. Streaming was super dicey, I remember, back in the internet days. But, podcasting, I think, really helped streaming sort of come into its own. And I also see where at one time it was a punchline in a joke. People would say, I remember this from the newsroom, and I was like, well, it's advancement, sort of. It was in the Aaron Sorkin show, The Newsroom.
Oh yeah, with Jeff Daniels. Yes.
Jeff Daniels. I mean, I love that show, but I remember flinching a bit when Jane Fonda, who owns the network, said, "You better rein Will in, otherwise he'll be hosting his own podcast." And it was that backhanded, like, yeah, when you can't cut it in regular media, you start your own podcast. It's a bit like if you can't cut it as a journalist, you start your own blog, that sort of thing, right? But then I think podcasting came into its own just last year, because in the Twilight Zone, the new one with, and I know I'm getting too overexcited about this, but no, to me, this was a big deal. They did Jordan Peele's reimagining of the Twilight Zone.
Right.
He did an episode called Nightmare at 30,000 feet, which was a sequel to Nightmare at 20,000 feet, which was the one that Shatner did. But in Nightmare at 30,000 feet, what happened was that the guy gets into his seat and there's an iPod in front of him, an old school iPod, and it's a podcast that is predicting everything that's happening on his flight. And I just went, Pip, do you realize what this means? And she was like, what? And I said, we've gone from being in the basement of the science building to being a punchline for people who couldn't cut it in regular media to now being the plot device in the fucking Twilight Zone. This is huge. And I love that. I love the fact that evolution has taken place. And so yeah, I think it's a big deal. And I think now you have people going, well, what experience do you have podcasting? I've heard people say that. What experience do you have podcasting? So when people tell me, for some of these jobs that I've interviewed for, and they say, well, we found someone with better qualifications. One of the things I think immediately is, you found someone that's been podcasting for over 15 years. Yeah, tell me another one. Because I was part of that original vanguard. And as I tell people before, I'm the first guy to take a novel from cover to cover and podcast the whole thing. And I was there in the beginning. And you're not going to tell me, because I've had that happen. But I will say it's also worked in my favor as well. I've had someone say to me, so you're a podcaster? And I said, yeah. And he goes, and the guy says, I podcast as well. And I said, really? How long have you been podcasting? And he went, now this was 2015. He said, oh, I've been podcasting a long time. I've been podcasting since 2011. And I went, really? That's amazing. And he goes, when did you start podcasting? I went, 2005. And the guy double taked. He was like, you were podcasting in 2005? I said, yeah. And I'm one of the authors of Podcasting for Dummies. And the guy reaches into his pocket, pulls out a card and goes, would you like to come and speak at our multimedia event? And I took his card and I said, I'll get back to you.
My people will get back to you.
Yeah. I think I might have said that, but I did wind up speaking at the event, and it wasn't a bad event, but it was funny how that turned around very quickly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that the future of podcast, the only thing that I have a real problem with is how some people try to rewrite podcasting history. And there was a Wired article that came out in like 2016, 2017. And they were Wired magazine was talking about the sudden popularity of podcast fiction. And I went, beg your pardon? And in this interview, the creators of Welcome to Night Vale said no one was doing what we were doing the way we were doing it when we started. And I was shocked because they started podcasting in 2010. And I went, and then the thread started on Facebook. And I stayed out of it, but it was brutal. There were people mentioning my name, Mark Jeffrey's name, Scott Sigler's name, JC Hutchins, Murr Lafferty. I mean, it got ugly. So I wrote a counter article that appeared on Tor.com, and it was saying, it said, I called it The Road to Night Vale. And I basically said, okay, so Welcome to Night Vale went on record saying this, but I got news for you. I've put together an infographic of all of 500 podcasts 100 podcasts that were online before 2010, fiction podcasts, and it just went on and on and on and on and on, and that was an edited list. I couldn't do it all because I was running out of time, and so there's this myth that apparently if it didn't happen before 2010, it didn't happen at all. And I this is why I'm glad that we're putting out the 4th edition of Podcasting for Dummies, so we can say this is the history. This is not just the history. This is the past. This is the present here, and then we're looking ahead to the future. And much like with streaming, I think the future is limitless. And some people would say streaming has overtaken podcasting. We don't need podcast anymore, but I disagree because I'm looking at Twitter right now because something caught my eye. Twitter was currently trending on Twitter again at the time of this recording is DDoS, and it turns out that right now the United States is getting hit with a massive DDoS attack. And it has taken down Instagram, Facebook, T-Mobile, Verizon, and Twitch. But podcasting is still going to be happening because that is time-shifted media. You're not reliant on the internet being up and running. You can put that episode up at any time. But and that's why I still think there's a place for this sort of thing. And this is why you need to you really need to be up on it. You need to be up on your technology, and you need to know that this is that why stuff like this is still needed. Because if you're reliant on streaming technology and real-time technology, and then something like this happens, you kind of find yourself in a boat without a rudder. And it never hurts. It never hurts to have a backup plan, and podcasting will always be there. And I think it still has a very essential place, and not only providing online content, but also in a broad skill set for anyone involved with social media and anyone in communications. And I have drawn from my music background, my theater background, and my communications background, all because of podcasting. And as much as I owe to Rafe, I owe the same to podcasting.
And it's interesting because it seems like they all make one braid, they all weave into one another. And that to me is what creativity is all about, is that you will draw on many different aspects of who you are and what interests you and what fascinates you and what you're good at and what you want to be good at in order to create. And I love that about people I speak with who are creative in nature, because they're not afraid of that. They're not afraid of it. And so I want to talk about something, because as I said, I know you have dinner to get to, but you can never leave, T. You can never.
Right. Yeah, I know. This I've had some interviews, but well, I mean, this is us. I mean, This happens in real life, and we've been catching. I know this has also been a catch up, and there's been a lot of things. We're cramming a lot into this interview, so
it's true.
Whether it's a part 1, part 2, or the continuing series, I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do this again for sure.
Oh, we definitely will. Yeah.
But I want to talk about the content creators package. You mentioned it right before we went on, and I want to hear about what it is. And I've already claimed this one, but I want you to, if you wouldn't mind, tell a little bit about what the content creators package is, and also what Create With Me is. What is that so that people who want it can take advantage of it?
So, as soon as I had finished up Discord for Dummies, I I suddenly took a step back and went, hang on a minute. Podcasting, Twitch, Discord. And then I realized that these 3 books would be ideal if someone was either looking to um, uh, to start this journey as a content creator, or if these 3 books were for the person who felt like they'd hit a brick wall and they needed like another perspective to try to figure out, okay, am I missing a step somewhere? I want to take my content creation to the next level. And that's when I said to Pip, I said, I should pitch this to Wiley, that they should bundle these 3 books together. And Pip said, you should do more than that. You should actually create the bundle yourself, and we should sell it. And I said, you know what? You're absolutely right. So we did the math, we figured it out, and we came up with the Content Creators Bundle, which you can get over at my website at tmorris.com. There is a link. There's a link to a store, and you follow it to the store. And what it is that you get all 3 books. You get Discord for Dummies, you get Twitch for Dummies, you get Podcasting for Dummies. Right now, the 3rd edition, and as soon as the 4th edition comes out, which is slated for the fall, so it's either going to be September or October. But once I get the 4th edition, it will be then put into place. But those 3 books we are selling. If you buy them all together in the bundle, you'll get them for a 20% discount, and that's United States only. That's domestic. But 20% discount, and on top of the 20% discount, they all get signed. They get signed by me, and so that is what the bundle is. It basically takes you through the basics of podcasting, the basics of Twitch, and the basics of Discord. So you've got podcasting, you've got streaming, and you've got community management, all covered across 3 books. And I would very much like to see this take off, because I think that is, if you really want to succeed in content creation, this is one way of doing it, is by having a strong foundation in all 3 of these, in podcasting, streaming, and Discord. And when you read these books, you'll see how they work together. You'll see how they feed off of one another. And it's also it's also nice because you'll get, when I wrote these 3 books, I was able to kind of take pieces from all 3 of them and just kind of interlock them. It was really funny because, in podcasting, I had to talk about the RIAA, and in Twitch, I had to talk about the RIAA, and even in Discord, I had to talk about the RIAA. I talked a little bit about interview techniques across all 3, because some people use Discord as an interview platform. There are all these things that these 3 books are they literally are Lego blocks when it comes to content creation, and that's what I'm offering at my website. I'm also offering at my website something that says Create with T, and this is where everything we've been talking about: Discord, podcasting, Twitch, communications, social media strategy, social media application. I will offer that to you. I will come in as a consultant, and I will look at your business either from an individual perspective, or if your business is looking for a consultant, looking for a fresh set of eyes, then I'm going to look at it from that perspective as well. And I've blogged about this before. I have watched where when I leave an organization and they basically go, yeah, we got this covered, their social media falls apart. When I was talking earlier about code.gov, when that contract came to an end, I really dreaded what was going to happen after I left. And after I left, it basically reverted back to what it was when I first got there. The code.gov's Twitter account now lacks a lot of focus when it comes to talking about open source projects. The blog they had, I had them blogging twice a week. It now blogs, if they're lucky, once a month. And then their video platform, which I built from the ground up, no longer exists. And that's the contracting world in a nutshell. You can't always expect somebody to pick up the reins where you left off, but it is a little heartbreaking. It's a little heartbreaking, but
Sure.
I just shrug and I go, they, there were circumstances that led to me not getting renewed for the contract. Part of it, I don't mind saying, part of it traces back to the furlough.
Mm.
So I can thank our current sitting president for taking away the best job I ever had.
Oh, that's too bad.
But the thing is, but if you want that expertise, it's for hire. And you can go on ahead and we can sit down and we can hammer out a schedule. We can hammer out a plan. We can hammer out a strategy. I'm currently working with the Drabblecast, which is a very established fiction podcast, and they want a fresh set of eyes to look at their podcast, and I'm going to be working with them, and I would love to work with you. So if this is something that you want, if there's something that you need, if it's something that you're curious about, the first consultation is free, but then we can talk about actually bringing me on board and helping you find a social media strategy, a streaming strategy, a podcasting strategy, or all of the above to make that happen.
And what's more, and this is what a great idea, the other part of this is that you then get T's expertise. And I sound like a commercial, but I don't, it's not that I am not getting any kickback for this. No, the thing is that consistency.
Checks in the mail.
That's right. That's IZOL. No.
I know how to spell it. I got this.
I know you do. No, but it's so important to note that when you work with someone like T, who knows the stuff inside and out, that he gives you the tools, but you've got to do the work. In other words, consistency is queen, and you've got to be consistent. So if you work with T and he develops this with you and gives it to you and says, okay, now go do it, you got to do the work. That there's nothing so frustrating to anybody, I think, than watching something that you've formulated and worked and collaborated on, and then they're like, yes, I've got it, and then they go, maybe I won't do it every week, maybe I'll do it every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then suddenly nothing is happening. And so please remember, if you decide this is something that you want to do, that you also have to decide for yourself that you're worth it. This is something that I find so often happens is, oh yeah. No. And then there's a disconnect there, So when you're working with people, T, how do you help them maintain that consistency? What do you do to give them the tools to be able to say, okay, we decided biweekly or once a week, whatever. How can they maintain that?
I try to give them a easy schedule to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say an easy schedule to follow, I go, let's concentrate first on 3 platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go beyond that, when you're ready to go beyond that, okay, we'll go beyond that. We'll try 4 platforms.
Mm-hmm.
They slowly start to build on what they want to do. The last thing I would do with any client would be to say, okay, let's dive in deep. We're going to have a podcast. We're going to have a stream. We're going to get on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, boom, boom, all this stuff.
Right.
And then they get overwhelmed. I have brought in people in the past. I brought in both as a consultant and as an individual. When I was working with a company, I would always say, well, let's start with the big 3. Let's start with the big 3 platforms first, and then we'll branch out into 4. Then we'll branch out into 5. And I slowly built on that as much as I could. And what I tell people is that you have to be serious about social media. It can't just be, we want to do this because it's cool. And I've been told that by clients. I've been told that I remember I actually talked somebody out of a podcast, and when they said, they said, well, we want to do a podcast. Like, that's great. What do you want to do the podcast on? And they said, we just want to do a podcast because it's cool. And I said, okay, well, let's stop here. What do you want to do in the end? What do you want to do in the long run? And they said, well, they said, we want to promote the books that we have and get new listeners and get new people. I said, okay, great. Well, then here's what I'm going to recommend you do. Take the title, because these people had a whole catalog of audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, take the catalog of audiobooks you've got, find the one that is not moving the most. It is the slowest of all your titles, and start podcasting it one episode at a time. Just start podcasting it. Podcast the whole book. And they looked at me like I was speaking in a foreign language. And I said, look, if you want to promote something, you got to give people a reason. You got to give a little something, a taste. You got to give them something for free. And a sample of the book isn't going to cut it. You need to have it be the entire book. And that was when the client patted me on the knee and said, oh, dear. And I'm not kidding. She called me dear. Oh, dear. You have no idea what goes into an audio production, do you?
Oh.
And I'm sitting there going, yep, okay. And yes, the second edition of Podcasting for Dummies had already been out. So I was just like, yeah, I don't know nothing. I'm just a guy with a book. It's okay. And so this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is why I always ask my clients, how serious are you about your podcast? Or how serious are you about your social media? If you're not serious about it, we're done. Right. You know, if you're not serious about your social media, and you don't want to invest in it, and you don't want to take some risks, then you've got to step up. You've got to make some hard calls. You really do. So that's what's going on there. I mean, that's what's going on there. Does that help?
It does. It does. And here's the thing. One of the things that, again, this is called the Creative Mindset Podcast for a reason. Mm-hmm. There are people in companies and in organizations who would probably be salivating, who would be chomping at the bit at the opportunity to be creative in social media or on a podcast or something like that. So as a business leader, it behooves you to find those people in your sphere already, and so being serious about it, absolutely. But then, like you said earlier, elevate those creatives, give them the opportunity to make something like this shine, because podcasting is technical, but so much of it is creative and so much of it is limitless that's where we can go with it, and then the only limit becomes the person's imagination.
Right. And that's where the trust comes in. And that's where that is where you just have to, you have to just have a little faith in the people that you're, in the people that you're bringing in. And if you have, like I said, when it comes to creating with me, I'm not going to overwhelm you with, you have to do this and you have to do that. I'm going to say, let's look at all the platforms that are out there. Let's figure out which ones are best for you, the first 3, and then we'll give you, future goals for 4 and 5. And then we come up with a plan, with a schedule, with a strategy. Now, I can't make you do it. And again, that goes back. That's why I say, how serious are you about this? Because once I give you this plan, if it fails and you haven't been following it, that's on you.
Right.
And it's hard. It's really hard. And some people have succeeded, some people have not. And the ones that haven't, I will say this, they've owned it. They've said, wow, T, I had no idea this stuff was so hard. And I'm like, yeah, podcasting is hard, which is why people like you, Isolda, who are on you said 300th episode?
Over 300. Yeah. This is like 337 or something.
Right. 300 episodes. That is why you see fewer Isolda Trachtenbergs, and you see more people that have like 4 episodes and they're out, because they didn't realize how tough this could be. So good on you, Isolda.
Aw, thank you. But here's the thing though. I think that honestly, you find which of all of these platforms, and there should be, there can be more than one, but I love talking with people and I love asking questions. And so podcasting is perfect for me. So So it doesn't, there are aspects of it that take work, but it doesn't feel like work, if you see what I mean. So
You're having way too much fun.
yeah, it's so much fun. And, we're 3.5 hours in. So, so yes, it's fun. But, recognizing that you, as I said, have a life to get back to and a wife and daughter who are probably going, it's dinner time. I have just a few more questions. No, but seriously, just I want to ask you, um, other than your books, which are obviously great resources, what 3 books have you recently read that you would recommend to people? What is something, and it could be fiction or non, that you're like, I loved this book, this was so awesome.
Right. Yeah. Well, that unfortunately has been the thing. I've been because of the way Twitch for Dummies immediately led into me doing another writing assignment for I contributed a chapter to YouTube for Dummies Junior. I contributed a chapter in that. That led to me doing, and then I got right into podcasting for Dummies. I literally have been going from one project, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. That's a really good thing. I've been going from one project to another project to another project to another project. I have not had time to read.
Wow.
And it's killing me. I mean, it's a good kind of killing me, because the only stuff I've been reading has been stuff that has been research for the books.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so it has been, so I haven't had any time to read.
Wow.
And it's been tough, but in the best possible way tough. You know what I mean?
Sure. Because you're too busy creating content to be consuming content. And that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So
yeah,
I want to thank you, first of all, because I know I want to have you back if you're willing to come back, because there's so much more we can be discussing.
Absolutely.
Good. I'm glad, because what fun. And maybe when the next edition of Podcasting for Dummies comes out, you can come back and we can chat more, because I feel a little bit like we've just barely begun to plumb the depths. So, and maybe if you and Pip want to come on together, that would be amazing too. Just putting that little bird in the little bee in your bonnet, little bird in your ear.
I will run that by her. I
would love to have you. That would be great, because we really didn't talk too much about your fiction writing. So, and I know 3.5 hours in, that's so funny, but also I have a lot of love for you and a lot of gratitude for you in my heart. So thank you so much for dropping so much wisdom and so many good, solid ideas for my audience, for people who are listening, and for me as well. And I have just one last question that I ask of everybody who comes on the show. It's a silly question, but I like to ask it. If you had a plane that was going to skywrite something in the sky and the whole world would see it, what would you say?
I would probably need a team of skywriters to write this. I would write, we can be better. We can be better. I won't lie. This has been a, don't get me wrong. Today, this has been like a little shining gem of a day. Last week was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And the week before was even harder, because I was struggling with depression. And so these past 2 weeks have been a really bumpy ride, and there's been a lot of fear, and there's been a lot of uncertainty. And I think a lot of this stems from the fact that we really can be better. I think that, I think that we really can strive to be better to each other and be better to ourselves. The best thing that's ever happened about this whole thing with COVID-19 has been that we have been forced to slow the fuck down.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been nothing but rewarding, at least for me. But with what happened with George Floyd, we were talking about not getting political, and yet somebody came on my stream and wanted to know, what did I think of everything? And I said, I can sum it up this way. George Floyd did not do anything to deserve what happened to him. Not a thing. Nothing deserves that. If they had gone back to his house and found him running a pedophile ring, okay, then maybe I could justify that. But for writing a bad check, no, absolutely not. And I have been very vocal about Black Lives Matter. I have chosen that is a hill I will die on. For my friend Al, for my friend Ron, for my friend Addison, who is no longer with us. I mean, for my friend Froy, for anyone of color, any person of color, people I know, people I don't know. That's we can be better. It starts with us. It's been a rough ride, but that's what I would, if I had a team of skywriters, that's what I would write. We could be better. Heavy note to end on, but yeah.
No, but I don't think so. I don't think it's a heavy note. I think it's an important one. I think this idea, I had a guest recently who said, Zolda, you asked me this question, what would your skywriting be? And I thought about it for a second and I said, be kind. That was it. Just be kind. That's it. And I said, or maybe leave it better than you found it. And those are the two things that I would say. And so I think that makes all sorts of sense that it's up to each of us individually to be better, to try to strive to be better, each one of us. That's a truism as far as I'm concerned. So not heavy, just true, right. Just true. So I'm so grateful to you. This might end up being 3 episodes of the show because
that's fine.
Because wow, so much wisdom, so much amazing information, so much. You've got such grace. I really appreciate you being on the show and participating so beautifully in your life and in your work. I'm really grateful for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And again, anytime you want me back on. If you want me and Pip back on, like I said, I'll work it out with Pip. But if you want me back on, when the 4th edition of Podcasting for Dummies comes out, we will pick up right where we left off.
That sounds amazing because honestly, we didn't really talk about podcasting as much as I would have liked. So that's another hour-long conversation. So yeah, there's so much, and I'm so thrilled that you're willing to come back. I am going to let T go because otherwise we'll start talking about something else that we have been wanting to talk about for the last 15 years and haven't had a chance. So if you like what you're hearing, do me a favor. Let me and let T know. He can be found on social media in so many ways. All of it is on the show notes page, but find him on Twitch TV at The T Monster. Find him on Twitter at T Monster. You should be sensing a theme now. Find him on Instagram at The T Monster. There are so many different ways. TheSharedDesk.com is his podcast. Facebook.com/author T Morris, and that's TEE. And then there's Happy Hour from the Tower, and then Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences. And then also T's sort of personal professional website is www.tmorris.com. So you can find him, follow him. As you can tell, he's got so much to share, so much wisdom. Find him, follow him, get the books. Now I've already spoken for the content creation package. Yes, I've already said that. So get yours. You can order yours and he will send it to you signed, which I think is fabulous. So yeah. Find T, follow him. If you like what you're hearing, please leave a review of the podcast on iTunes or Google Podcasts or wherever it is you listen, and comment and let me know. Are there guests that you think I should be talking with? Are there things you want to hear about the creative mindset and how we creatives can succeed in both the professional and the personal world? I would love to talk to you about it. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Creative Mindset Podcast, sending you all of my love. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2020. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I send you all of my love.